Hey guys, what up? What up? We're back today to probably continue the video we're watching yesterday. It was dragging on for quite a bit. Not only that, we're gonna be going through the interview between Legendary Drops and Jonathan. I haven't seen anything about it. I was told to stay basically stay on social media so I could blind react to this because it's good. So we're going to see how good it is, basically. But this is going to be second. We're going to leave that for then. And before we continue this video, I also wanted to just real quick make sure there wasn't any. Yes, there is. Teaser season continues. Let's see what the teaser for today is. Already, why are you slow? Why are you choppy? What is this? So there's ball lightning, fires the slow moving, yada yada yada. Hits enemies in range every 0.2 seconds. 750 more chance to shock. Spells again. This damage is lightning damage for whatever. Wait. 5% damage is lightning damage for each 100. Wait, what? So if you have 10,000 mana, you're just gonna have a 500% damage as lightning damage on top of the base damage you have. But then it has this downside, cause this of your max mana. Now, I swear, Torchlight has scarred me from the word additional. But this is literally plus, I think. So it's going to be base cost plus 5.3 just of your max mana. Support skills have 20% chance to fire 8 projectiles in a circle. So you could, in theory, have your skeletal archers use this, or your ice mages use this, and just blow up an entire screen. Oh, let's see. Let's watch the thing. But this is ball lightning. That was wild shards proc in there. The Nova there is wild shards. That's wild shards. Wild shards. How is it proccing so often? Isn't this 20% chance? Okay, good. It's not proccing. She proc like 3 times in a row. Sigil of Power. Oh. This is a staff. Gain 20% of damage as extra lightning damage. Increase spell damage. Max mana. 5 to level of lightning spells. What? Shit. That's a lot of levels. Gains this when you spend a total of 50% of your maximum mana while in area. Maximum 4 stages, 40% more damage per stage. Minimum 1 second between gaining stages. Sigil radius is this, sigil whatever is that. So that's, I assume, the animation for gaining a stage. Ooh, Subtractim has
Hey, what's up?
I'm not gonna watch this Sork gameplay. I'm not gonna watch it yet. We're going to look at we're going to finish this one, like I said. Then this one comes next. And if we have time, we'll look for which game players. Potentially look at Subtractims, and I don't know yet. Still yet to decide. We'll see. But without further ado, let's go on with the stream.
Expedition.
I guess with the recording.
We'll put a map in here, and just to make it a little bit easier, we're not going to actually do the rest of the map. We're just going to do the expedition part of it. So what expedition is if you only get once you get the difficulty of that pinnacle boss up to a certain level. So of course, once again, each endgame grind has to have a way to expand it, a way to make it more difficult, a way to specialize into it, a way to get rewards that are specific to that. So next, we're not going to and the goal is try to get Verisium relics that are left over from their past. If you've played PoE 1, the mechanic is quite similar. Effectively, what you're going to see is all of these markers here on the ground that are going to tell you whereabouts things are buried, and they're going to dig these things up using explosives. So effectively, you have to choose carefully where you're going to place the explosives in order to be able to get the most amount of bonus. There are also these things.
Just give us big boom.
Both bonuses and downsides.
I don't think I like Expedition without big boom.
Monsters after that point will,
I'll be very honest.
Stronger,
I don't think I do.
So effectively, Octavian's going to place down some of these dynamite charges in a string, and then once he's done that, then he will be able to detonate them and spawn things. Now he's choosing carefully which remnants he wants to use based on his build. He wouldn't want, for example, to make all the monsters immune to ice, because that would completely destroy him. Now there are lots of interesting things to find under the ground. There's like chests, and there can often be caverns and things like that. Once you get to the end game system,
I need to screenshot this. But yeah, apparently now in Expedition, you pick up the artifacts one after the other.
Content for this league.
It's no longer automatic.
And so on to find and things like that. Now the purpose of killing all these monsters primarily is to get these Verisium artifacts. You can see one there that says exotic coinage, but there's various other things like that on the ground. They also have these chests that drop items. There's a broken circle artifact, and oh look, they're unique, nice. You might as well identify it. I don't know which one that is. Let's have a look. This is just unscripted, by the way. Apron of Emerian.
Bleeding is aggravated.
Is aggravated, which says that aggravated bleeding does 200% extra damage. Right, cool. So this is a bleed build type unique. Actually, whatever. Anyway, yeah, once you've got these
trash item,
then you can trade them with the Kalgurans for various different rewards. And once again, I'm not, in the interest of time, I'm not going to go into too much into this, but probably one of the more interesting ones is using crafting with a guy called Rog. We'll do that one here just so we can have a look. So Rog effectively has a shop where he'll sell you different items. You can re-roll it using the currency as well. But once you find something that you want to kind of start with, which maybe you don't, there we go. Then what you can do is after you buy it, he'll offer to do various crafts. Okay, so this is an interesting one, Sebas, before you click anything. So what this is going to do is remove all prefix modifiers from the item. So if we like the prefixes, we probably want to skip this one and not do it. So let's skip this one. We got the same one again, which is very annoying. So, okay, so I guess we just have to do it then.
Big ban.
Then re-roll suffix modifier. There's quite a lot of different modes here, but effectively you get various ability to modify the item before you go. I think this one is going to turn out to be completely crap. Remove a single modifier with the lowest modifier level. Sure, I guess you can just take it. Anyway, that was a pretty crap example, but actually this is a crafting system that allows you to make some pretty interesting items. Now, the other thing you're going to get from expeditions, other than
maybe I will go expedition early just because of Rog.
What else do we have here?
Just because of Rog.
Right, we'll just do the logbooks next. Okay, right, so we've got logbooks. So if you can get a logbook, it effectively allows you to do a super expedition, which is like an area that has only expedition. These logbooks have various mods and things as well. And then once
why am I hearing
then
it's twice?
It has a lot more.
I have to assume now they're actually sourcing
to make it much
part of the. I have to assume they're sourcing part of the audio naturally, so you were hearing the game, but also hearing the microphone, the game through the microphone, which is why we're hearing it twice.
String. So there's a lot more strategy
that's my guess.
in picking what type of things you want to find. Also, if you there's also things like bosses and uniques and like special underground areas and things like that to find. So there's just quite a lot of stuff hidden under the ground that you want to do. So at least find an underground area maybe. Yeah, is that one there? Okay, right.
I really just like the big boom in expedition, like seeing, like I know this is a logbook, so it's more rewarding than the map one, so it's
and then when
and of course it's larger, but like
monsters, which you can try and keep up with.
Just thinking
although I
of
hear the
running
balance of the meat
expedition.
is, a bit wrong at the moment, so he might get.
And keep in mind, I think they've already confirmed there's going to be big boom. It's just, I think it's a tablet modifier or something. It's not base. I don't know if it's part of the tree. Hopefully it's part of the tree. I could be wrong, and it could also be part of the tablets. I'm not sure they mentioned where it's going to be. Either way, running this like your regular maps for expeditions without that node being on the tree would be rough. If it's on the tree, then good. It just means you might have to do a few logbook bosses to unlock it, which just means it starts so slower and it picks up. To me, if I have to single-handedly pick everything, every single map, I'm gonna lose it.
One shot, so we'll see.
Or maybe it's
as the remnants.
A part of the reason why I don't think I'm as willing to do it also is because, to my knowledge, expedition is in this exact same state it was in PoE 1. You know, the gameplay is the exact same thing. Nothing has really changed in terms of gameplay. Now, rewards could be slightly different. I don't know if there's anything that's exclusive from expedition, except maybe Rogue. They didn't mention every season mechanic should have unique player power that it offers. I just don't know what expedition offers other than raw crafts. I mean, 2 yen is just currency. It has to be raw. Unless they've added something else that you can buy with the artifacts. And it doesn't seem interesting enough for me to ignore the actual gameplay that is meant for me.
Trigger, all of the monsters are going to get harder. So they might get pretty hard by the end, even if they're easy at the start.
I hope uncut skill gems are going to be very common in the end game. I genuinely hope so. If not for anything, but because I would want to, like, starting out in early access, the Minion community is going to need a whole lot of skill gems simply just for testing like different specters, seeing what works, seeing what, like, you know, what interesting mobs there are, and each one taking its own gem means we're going to need a whole lot of gems. Isn't, oh wait, are this is that a runic skeleton? Let's see, what's his name? Order or Sherry of Thunder. Can I just say that sword looks a lot more defined. It reminds me a lot of the runic skeletons from PoE 1, and of course the expedition counterpart, which is the same mob that is here except more detailed.
Right, so rather than keeping on killing those guys, we'll just quickly show you one of the things that he found. So there was a sub area down here where called Hidden Aquifer. There's quite a lot of variety of different things like this. I'm not sure what's in this one. But yeah, as I said, some of the bosses, they all contain this.
I remember seeing this layout and a boss that was teased in PoE 2. So this is probably,
that can be,
so that's probably the boss.
So yeah, there's quite a lot of things you're gonna.
Or one of the bosses that you can find. Big ice. Yo, look at just how much ice is everywhere in front of the walls and everything.
Completing the most difficult content in this end game is going to allow you to get points to put in the ascendancy tree, make it more difficult, add more of them, that kind of thing. So yeah, let's go on to the next one.
Is this still one portal per map? Is my question.
Sure. Oh, you might as well.
In all the side ones.
Well. So there's.
That's the one I'm talking about. There we go. There we fucking go. Number of explosives is 1. Just seeing that alone means big boom. Explosive 1, increase explosive radius. It means you need to beat the boss once to get it. But that shouldn't be too much of a... I imagine it doesn't mean we would grind. It would be too much of a grind to get the fight, right? Spawn with 20% of their life missing. Oh shit, they actually took a bunch of different nodes in PoE 1. And then placement range. Beautiful.
an example here, which makes the number of explosives to 1, so that you only get 1 really large explosive rather than having to do a whole string of them in your maps. Maybe just a randomly interesting one.
I mean,
Right,
that's a
let's
fan
have a look at
favorite.
the next one, which is Ritual. So Ritual is one of the other in-game grinds.
Do they show the different nodes?
When you enter a map with this mechanic, you're going to find these ritualistic circles through the area.
Why is YouTube chats just
disconnecting
and not connecting?
So when you kill monsters inside them, it effectively grants the monsters as tribute. And so when you summon the ritual, all the monsters that you killed within that ritual circle will spawn again.
Can I
Why
just...
does that root spider have no eyes?
That Devourer looks very, very interesting. It looks like almost like a tree. Look at that. Does he ever... He did hover on it for a split second. That's a Devourer, right?
All the monsters that you killed within that ritual circle will spawn again.
Nameless Burrower.
Why does that root spider have no eyes?
Frederick, thank you for the follow.
Okay,
How you doing?
Now, of course, because
hopefully it's not a bot. Please don't be a bot.
The circle and summon them again by the with the ritual, I believe.
Expert
So
heavy crown.
The ritual effectively closes you off into a small area, and you have to fight all the monsters that you killed in that circle again. But the key thing is that there's it empowers them.
How did he not die?
And you have to fight all the monsters that you killed in that circle again.
He did die. I guess it's just cheats do not allow him to actually die.
It empowers them.
Because there's no way you say his life was anything but empty there.
Each time you do this, you get a type of points called tribute that you can then spend on items. But if you're willing to risk it and make the rituals even more powerful, you can go to another ritual circle, kill more monsters inside of it, and then you'll be able to make the it'll summon both the ones from this circle and from the subsequent circle as well, making the rituals very, very tough by the time you get to the end. Oh, there's one last monster over there.
That is no... There's still one more.
All right. So then when you click on the ritual...
Please tell me it pauses the game now.
Which allows you to spend tribute.
It still doesn't pause the game?
I don't think we want to spend too long on this, but effectively, this is the reward mechanic for ritual, and the more tribute you get...
Why would you add a pausing feature, then proceed to not pause the game when you're interacting with menus like ritual? Make it make sense. It's like, look.
All right. So then when you click on the ritual,
I think all you have to do is watch this guy on the right, and you see they're still moving. This guy is so swiping. It's like,
I don't think we want to spend too long on this, but effectively, this is the reward mechanic for ritual, and the more tribute you get, the more things you get. Jesus Christ, why are there more monsters?
Is that an oversight or like why?
Because it was a corrupted map. Okay, right. So because this is a corrupted map, by the way, every time you kill monsters, it's
tell me he at least sees what Beyond does here.
Behind, and then demons can get summoned from them when you kill them. That's just one of the random corruption outcomes you can get due to beast corruption in a map.
Oh, they're random.
Anyway, right. So this is tribute. You can buy items. None of these look particularly amazing, but do you have an omen in there? No. Okay. So in that way, we've got the end of the inventory. Right. So one of the things you're going to be looking for this are omens. So omens are we've got the end of the inventory. Right. So one of the things you're going to be an omen in there. No. Okay. So in that way, we've got the end of the inventory.
Are these the ones we know? Next orb remove only suffix. Yeah, we know about that one. And I think I know the left one, which is like it adds 2 affixes or something like that.
Item that you can use to make more targeted changes to your items. So let's have a look at what they do. So here's an item here where we might like the prefixes but thinks the suffixes are crap. Normally what you might want to do is either re-roll them with a chaos orb or maybe remove them with an orb of annulment. But you can't normally choose which mod to remove. This is an omen of dextral annulment. What that does is while this item is active in your inventory, your next orb of annulment will remove only suffix modifiers. So if you use that, and then use an orb of annulment, it'll only remove suffixes, not prefixes. And if you want to remove another suffix, he's got another one there. So this is a way of kind of doing meta crafting on items that allow you to make targeted changes. And with this, you can make some pretty broken stuff. There's another one here that says, while this item is active in your inventory, your next exalted orb will add 2 modifiers. That just effectively is a double exalt. This kind of thing is like a pretty simple one, but there are a lot of these and they do very interesting things. So that's just a sort of interesting
charm charges used. So belts can roll charm charges as well as flash charges, it seems.
Of course, like other in-game mechanics, there's an uber boss for this as well, and killing that boss is going to get you points in the... well, we don't actually have to go there, but it will get you points for the Atlas tree for that league. So that's one of the other grinds as well.
Little detail here. I love the markers now for when an NPC wants to talk to you. The nail design is
for the Atlas tree for that league. So that's one of the other grinds as well. Right. Next up, we'll talk about Delirium. So in Delirium maps, your mind is going to be infected by a mysterious entity known as Tang Mizzou. You see these mirrors, and when you go through
I should know who that is.
Affects your mind and starts creating all these nightmare creatures, as well as affecting, kind of giving these strange things for other monsters as well.
This area has a map boss alongside Delirium. Needless to say, you probably want to turn off the Delirium by the time you get to the boss.
So there's the Delirium right there.
Your life
does he actually pause? Because I feel like I saw a clip also right in the review that does that, where it's like it just pauses you in front of the mirror
so as you can see,
for like a second.
You get this like mist, mysterious mist that goes to the area. It both spawns new monsters as well as affecting the existing monsters in interesting ways. Now, the main thing you're going to be looking for in this league are called distilled emotions. Hopefully one drops and we can have we can show you what they do. But if not, we've got one in the inventory. Now, if you're able to keep up with this mechanic, then you might be able to cover the entire map in it, in which case you can get some bonuses on map bosses as well.
Or you could just die. I mean, with how quickly Delirium scales, you better be confident in your build.
Alright, so there's some distilled emotions. We have distilled ire and distilled paranoia. Now what this allows you to do is craft mods onto your amulet that grant you passives from your passive tree. So if you open up the crafting window for that, so effectively if you put your amulet in there, then if you do a combination of 3 different distilled emotions, then it will allow you to get a bonus passive, what's it called?
We know this. We already know this much.
1 second when stunned.
Wait. Y'all seen this? Y'all seen this? So we can get spirit from our amulets as well. So we can. Let's see something else, because I am curious about something now. Like I remember the answer to this. I don't know if I don't remember if what I'm thinking about is completely accurate, so bruh. Mashups and weapons are used to attack directly. Oh, this is disheartening. Kind of. So what I'm thinking right now is let's use PoE DB to show it. Inventory, currency. Was it sockets? stuff like this, it specifies martial weapons, not just weapons, right? So for the purposes of this, what happens if you socket it into a non-martial weapon? My first instinct is it just picks up the bonus from the martial weapon. But what if it doesn't? It doesn't outrightly say, oh, for non-martial weapons, this is what you get. And according to this, ones aren't martial weapons. And neither are scepters. So we just might not have access to those sockets. That is interesting. So if we go under the assumption that we cannot pick up as kappa or whatever this is called, then I would like to believe that the amulets can roll explicit spirit mod, because you know this is the implicit value. I don't believe you can get spirits here. You'd have like flat spirits, or I don't think that would be global increased spirit, but I mean that would be nice, but I doubt it. It'll probably just be flat spirits, just like the implicit, if there's any spirit support, that is.
1 second when stunned.
It could also just be something like spirit reservation efficiency or something. I don't see this being the only spirit support, but it could be the only source of flat spirit from the amulets.
Now, once again, this is a type of player power you only get from here, but you can also use them on maps as well. So if you put them on maps, then it allows you to add bonus mods to them to the map, in addition to the rare mods that you can normally get. So it's another form of juicing that you can do for in-game as well. Right, so that is Delirium. Now, all of these different mechanics from the different in-game grinds kind of can be added with each other. If you open up the map, you can kind of start to add multiple mechanics overlapping with those towers. You can juice maps with, you know, the thing like mechanic we just said. You're allocating points in the Atlas tree. Effectively, altogether, it allows you to really boost from the bottom of the Atlas to the top of the Atlas.
One good thing is the AoE is quite forgiving, like it's quite big.
To the point we can get pretty crazy.
Of course, this is the pinnacle boss.
There is one more in-game grind, which I'm not going to really talk too much about.
This guy right here.
That little object there. So effectively, this is where the Uber pinnacle boss is. And
like there was no universe where I saw this Twitch name and didn't think it was a bot. There was not a single universe. JVGJ, bruh.
Won't be able to actually get into to meet the requirements yet, but effectively there are around the map various ways to get keys to be able to enter this area. It's kind of mysterious, and this is the hardest content in the game. So when you play the game, you'll have to try it out. But effectively, inside this area, you will don't actually go in there. Inside there,
well, like you know, don't do it. You know, let's not do it.
Boss as well.
Let's not show them what we have behind that door.
The hardest challenge in the game. That is something that I think players really enjoy.
I'm gonna head in there blind. I feel like.
So,
and I'm gonna get absolutely destroyed, and I'll be pissy about it.
Overview of how the end game works. There was quite a lot of information there, quite a lot of sequels to leaks from PoE 1 as well. But you can sort of see, I guess, the beginnings of a system that we're going to be expanding a lot over time. As we add more of these PoE 1 league sequels, and as we add more content that leagues to PoE 2, we've effectively got a lot of space here to be able to add as much of this in-game as possible. The Atlas tree with all its different little
good video.
What you might call
very informative.
You know, the ascendancy kind of
seeing the reveal, because there was actually new information here. There was a surprising amount of information that wasn't talked about. So should we just let's just round out the video.
All of these things, you know, adding all of these things, we're going to add one every time we add a league to effectively allow you to.
For anybody that's curious about the video, there you go.
Capability to have a lot of content here. So
there you go.
Sort of shows you.
If you do check it out, give it a like.
In early access, even though it is early access, there's a lot of content here. There's a lot to do in in-game. There's the campaign plus the cruel version of the the first half of the campaign plus the cruel version of the campaign, and all of that is, I guess, going to be coming out on December 6th.
Look at this. So look at our favorite stash box.
The answer is to that is that we're going to be releasing a bunch of supporter packs in the relatively near future when we announce all this content.
All right, let's go to the next one. I don't think there's any information else there that is that we don't already know. So this is an interview I have not watched. I have been told to specifically not watch it until stream. So we are here, and I hear it's good. I have no idea what he asked or what this interview looks like. So let's just see. I mean, I like legendary drops typically. I think he would probably have good questions. That was like my first assumption when I saw the video. I was like, oh shit, he has an interview.
Wouldn't it be great
So let's watch.
to know what the secret is behind having a successful live service game so we could share it with the world? One of the things that I've always wanted to do was to sit down with someone that has a successful game or a successful live service game and dissect the inner workings of it to understand how they know the player's perspective so well and how they can deliver a game that players actually want to play. And in this case, well, we get to do just that. I got the opportunity to sit down with Jonathan Rogers, one of the co-founders and the technical director of Grinding Gear Games, Path of Exile 1, and their upcoming game, Path of Exile 2. This is an incredibly special conversation where we get to talk about both games, the success of the first one and what we get to look forward to in the second one. But even more so, I even go in to talk about some of the issues that I'm seeing in the games industry today. We have a little bit of back and forth on that as well. This is a very special interview, a very cool video. I am so happy to share this with you guys. It would not have been possible if it wasn't for you in the first place. Without your support, I wouldn't be able to reach these people. So I have to thank you for this. And this video
is it quality? Yeah, it is fine.
Enjoy. True. So you're one of the founders of Grinding Gear Games. What led you guys to make Path of Exile, and did you guys think you would make it this far?
So I actually was one of the founders straight out of university.
Okay.
I was friends with Chris, who, you know, he was basically my best friend through university, and we kind of, I mean, I knew I wanted to be a game developer from the point I was like 10 years old, right? Like I was doing game development like as a hobby right from that point. So it really wasn't a question of like, was I going to be a game developer? It was a question of like, how is that going to happen? And Chris, he was actually the one who sort of suggested, look, what we need to be doing is making a sequel to Diablo 2. That was basically his view on things. And I obviously loved Diablo 2 as well.
Yeah.
But like I wasn't like, at the time when he was suggesting this, I wasn't still a player of it. You know what I mean? Like I played it a huge amount earlier, but Chris was still deep in Diablo 2 and obviously loved the game. But he just made a really good case for the fact that, you know what, like, there hasn't been.
To this day, I still haven't played Diablo 2. Whenever I look at it, I just lose all motivation to potentially play it. Not saying it's not a good game. Heard good things about it. Everybody who plays it seems to love it. I just haven't been able to get past a hurdle to play it, personally.
A game that got the whole formula right for a really long time. Like there was no evidence at the time that Blizzard was making it, right? Like we just had no idea.
Yeah, there was like a 10-year lull or something, right?
Yeah, it was that because I mean,
then they made D3.
That's a whole thing, but effectively they hadn't announced anything.
The infamous
D3. As far as we were concerned, it was just like
and its reward auction house.
It was still selling, by the way. Like people were still selling physical copies of Diablo 2. Yep. Like it might have been like 10 years later or something like that. There was still game was still selling like hotcakes. And it's like okay.
It's still good today.
Yeah. There were you, and so you had a game and it's like, okay, no one's made like a true successor to this thing. It's still selling in stores. Obviously, people, you know, there's still a huge amount of demand for the stuff. Why the hell, you know, like, are we not the ones doing this? So, yeah, I mean, basically, we.
Thank God for that decision. Thank God for that conversation, because like, imagine a world without Path of Exile. Give me a second. Somebody has decided to look for trouble. All right, I'm back. Let's continue this.
You know, we decided, hey, we'll just get started. And I was doing a lot of hobby game development. Chris had done a little bit of that, but you know, he was actually doing some security stuff. And we were just like, okay, like, well, let's just do it then. So yeah, we just started writing code and getting things done. And you know, we went a long way. And you know, I remember at the very beginning, because like we actually did like think, okay, well, what is the what would success look like? for doing this. Like if we're going to do this, like what would we have to actually achieve? And the thing that we thought that we needed to achieve was effectively 10,000 concurrent players. That was the amount that we sort of worked out that if we had that, the amount of money that we would be making would be able to support the studio, and everything would be okay. So that was kind of our like what we were trying to do. So anything beyond that point, as far as we were concerned, was just gravy. You know what I mean? Like everything beyond that was great. So yeah, I mean, we pretty much achieved that like right from the start. Like as soon as we had our closed beta, like things were going well and the company just did really well. So yeah, it's been pretty crazy. But yeah, I mean, as I said, like, that was kind of our thing.
I can imagine how emotional you would get thinking back through how far Path of Exile has come, and then the reception that PoE 2 has had since its reveal.
At the time, sort of thought that we weren't thinking like we had to be the biggest game ever. We were just like, we can be sustainable if we have 10,000 concurrent users. So that's the audience we need to attract. If we can do that, then we're good. And so that was kind of our thinking. I think the sort of the grander scale is something that it wasn't really in our mind.
Yeah. So I mean, obviously, Path of Exile has been a bit of a standout success, especially like with free-to-play games, ARPG specifically. I still think there's not a lot of competition out there. Even you guys saw an opportunity, and I mean, we've had a couple of games come out over the last few years, but nothing in the same vein. What do you guys attribute to the game's longevity and its success?
So
nice.
When we started,
that tweet still rubs me the wrong whenever I remember it, and it's like you could have just said absolutely nothing, and we'd be fine. Could have just shut the fuck up. We'd be groovy, no problems. But you choose violence.
I guess what we saw was there were kind of like 5 pillars to make a good action RPG. Like there's what and these are the things that we thought, okay, like there are people who have some of these, but there's no other game that has all of them except for Diablo 2. So the first one would be well, I mean, in no particular order. You've got random level generation. For longevity, you just need to have it. You need to have it. I mean, you need to do it well, because if you don't have that, I mean, look, things are just going to get boring very quickly. You've just played through the same thing 1,000 times. I mean, obviously, even with random level generation, that can still happen, but it takes a lot longer. The next thing is a secure online economy. So effectively, you have to have the ability to trade items, and it has to be secure in the sense that nobody can dupe them. There's no cheats. There's nothing like that. Like that's really important for that long-term feeling, because it makes the stuff that you find feel like it has value. Which I think is very important for the long term. The next one is that you have to have
dupes are. He makes a very good point there, because if you look at every game that has had a duplication problem in the past half a year, think last Epoch, Diablo, and you look at their economies, because they all have economies. Think about, I guess I want to say, think about the last time you thought to yourself in those games, oh, I want to afford this. I'm going to play the game, like this very end game gear. I'm going to play the game so I can get the gold, because they both use gold, to afford this. Because the thing with duplication is the moment it's in the game, especially gold duping, is everybody, like, they just have access to so much gold that they buy the best gear, and supply demand shit shoots up in price. Now nobody who doesn't have the best gear can afford it, so then all gear goes up in price because everybody's trying to sell it to afford the thing that just went up in price. And then when you compare that to like the amount of gold honest players are getting, it's like, oh, you just don't want to interact with the economy. As someone who has played Diablo 4 for 6, like I've played every season of Diablo 4, including preseason, I have only interacted with trade once or twice in the past 2 seasons. Before then, I tried. I hated the amount of friction that was there. But even if it wasn't to that point, it just feels like you have to do so much to get to the point where you can afford the gear you might want to use. Last Epoch, I gave up all hopes on getting like like even 3 LP like Exsanguine and stuff like that, like it's out of reach. Like I'm never getting this. And I think that's a very, very bad feeling for a game to have. And you look at Path of Exile, there's so many upgrades you can make that, and there's so much currency you would make as an honest player. Now, granted, you need strategy and all of this. You need an actual plan to get to the the mirrors. But there's so many different ways to upgrade and whatnot before you get to that point, that by the time you're looking at those really expensive gear, you can deal with content that is making you a substantial amount of currency. And the substantial amount of currency is an amount that, I guess, each hour of your time you see meaningful chunks into, like meaningful strides in the direction of the upgrade you're getting to. It might not be, oh, you do it in an hour or anything that crazy, but even if it's, let's say you have 10 hours of grinding ahead of you, every hour you see, you're getting that much closer to where you're going. Versus, I didn't want to bring it up, but Torchlight right now is quite the shit show for once you get started up until, I think, time mark 8. Time mark 8 is where you start making currency. Anything below there, you just get fuck all. Gear wise, meh. You get some gear, but like you're not getting anything meaningful. You're not dropping the actual currency that's being used to trade. You basically have no trading power until you get to time mark 8. But to get to time mark 8, you need to have had some trading power. So the problem I find with Torchlight system, even though there are no duplications or whatnot, is you hit a very steep currency wall required to progress very early in it, so early that you are not incentivized to keep grinding, because I mean, you're always going to have that wall, and it just gets steeper and steeper, to be honest. Because even in the juicier content that rewards more, you still just have steep upgrades, you know. So I think the biggest problem with Torchlight in its current iteration is you hit that steep wall way too soon. You should easily have that, I want to call it a honeymoon phase, where you're doing nothing but just getting upgrades. It should just be upgrades, upgrades. You shouldn't have to spend hours from one upgrade to the other when you're setting time mark 7. This is, in my opinion, that's like this sign that this system is just broken. You know, there should be, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying there should not be friction or pushback. It should be a challenge, but you shouldn't get to the point where, oh, now you're grinding for 5 hours for one upgrade. No, it should be a case of, imagine you grinded in PoE League Start day 1, 5 hours, and you only got one item. What were you trying to get? Are you trying to get Mage Blood? Maybe, that, but that's like a chase item. If you're trying to get just a 6 link, you would probably get it before then. If you're trying to get an Awakening Gem, like, there's so many options that are still within reach, that have substantial that you would feel substantial upgrades if you were to get, that are not just astronomically expensive compared to the amount of currency you naturally gain by playing the game. So in Torchlight, in the case of Torchlight, by having this start that early, it doesn't exactly get better. So you have this sense of endless grinds hit you very soon. And in my opinion, with ARPGs, you don't want the player to feel that too soon, because typically when you get to that point, at least in PoE, it's when you start min-maxing your build. It's when your next upgrade starts costing like 50 divines, 100 divines. It's when you've done everything you can, you have a solid build on your hands already. Now you want to take it to the next level. Now, of course, some builds are more expensive, some builds are less. I'm talking about the average here. I kind of lost my train of thought. Oh yeah. So in the case of Torchlight, by giving the player this enormous grind right from the get-go, like you just came out the gates and they gave you grind first. It all accumulates in your memory of a season. So like now, whenever I think of Torchlight this season, I'm thinking it's such a massive grind because I was grinding from time mark 7 to get to time mark 8. I was grinding to get from time mark 8 to time mark 8.1. I grinded a lot to get to from 8.1 to 8.2. Grinded a lot to get to profound, and everything just adds up. Whereas with PoE, I'm like, it wasn't that much of a grind. You know, I got to T16s. You know, it didn't take that much effort. Day 3, well, you would have your 6 links and whatnot. You would have the cheaper uniques you needed, stuff like that. T17s, you know, that is the grind to get to where you can do them. But before you're trying to get to that point with T17s, T16s, you get to the point where you can clear them, and it's you know, you're dying, but you can clear them. You have 6 portals, and goddamn, you're gonna use them, right? You get to the point where, okay, now you've gotten some upgrades under your belt. You're no longer dying every single map, but now you know you're surviving. You're dying less, you know, but it's still a bit of a slow clear. Then not too much currency spent after that. You're like, okay, now you're clearing it pretty at a decent pace. You're not the fastest, you're not the slowest, but a decent pace. You're not dying as much. You're getting more comfortable. Then you can start thinking of your bigger upgrades to really supercharge this current iteration to where you're now speed running T16s. And then you set your sights on T17s because they're that much more profitable. And you repeat the T16 process where, you know, you're dying T17s. And I think the problem with T17s in PoE 1 is that this is a healthy progression so far. But T17s, the jump from T16 to T17 is so wide, and the amount of builds that can run it are not every build can run in T17. It doesn't work that way. Not every build can. They have so many obnoxious mods currently and whatnot, and like mechanics that you don't even know while you're in the T16 stage if you can you can get past the T17 hurdle. Now, if you're a more experienced build creator and whatnot, you actually do know if you see the potential to take this there without spending astronomical amounts of money, or if you think you can spend astronomical amounts of money and get there, you know. But for the average player, you don't know. You're just like, you hope so, but like, you really don't know. You really do not know. And I think that's the unhealthy part about T17s in PoE 1. All this to say, other than T17s, I think the progression on PoE is very, very comfortable. I think it's very well thought out, and his point on the duplication is it's a big part of the reason why trading in the other games that have duplications, like the gold duplications and whatnot, is just a whole lot more awkward, and why the economy is always fucked. And why PoE's economy in comparison is very stable, because if there's any dupe or whatever, it is caught very quickly, and you know, bans are given, like severe action is taken, so people are disincentivized to actually engage with those kind of bugs or whatever, even if GGG don't know about it, you know. Whereas in the other games, it's like, they get slaps on the wrists potentially. Maybe a few people get banned when enough people have done it. It's like, you know.
A random item system. So, and what I mean by that, what I mean is like the item system has to have elements of chance, and it has to be that anything you kill could be the thing that could drop the next amazing thing that you need to find. So in practice, since we launched, we have also added more deterministic things as well, which I think do have a place, but you certainly
100%.
It needs to be that just killing any random monster could be the one that drops like the amazing item. Like, you still need that feeling all the time, otherwise, you know,
I know that bot.
Like, if you don't have that, then what happens is that you see then you finish a grind, and
I know
the
that
next
fair
grind
omnibot
is like stretching out ahead of you. And if you don't think you're going to get any rewardingness,
you're not going to want to play it.
Finish that. That's a good moment that you might choose to quit. So that's actually one of those things that is really important as well.
Yeah.
The next one is you need action.
To play a bit, to say a bit more about his points here, is that a big reason why I don't farm essences for too long is when you farm strategies like essences, you get to the point where, I mean, you're making X amount of money per hour, right? You're doing yellow maps. You know the essence. You know you're making X amount of money per hour, right? When it comes to essences, the chances of variance in the amount of loot you're getting is lower. Like you're not juicing your map, so the chances of dropping like the really cool, like it could be happening, but it's even more unlikely than it was when it was insanely unlikely. So it probably isn't gonna happen. So the reason I stop essences many times is because I get to the point where I'm like, I like the steady amount of money, and it's good for when I need income to get a bunch of upgrades that are around the budget range. But when I need to start stockpiling big chunks of currency, I drop essences because I don't want to go to divine. I don't want to make 100 divines by making 2 divines, like 2 divines an hour. I guess. I mean, that's an exaggeration. It's not really those numbers, but what I'm saying is I don't want to inch, just chip my way at it when I make a massive goal. I would rather, play with a strategy that has a more variance, but could potentially get me there much sooner. And of course, I'm not talking about like just hunting for like a mage blood, no, but like ambush, for example, it gives you good enough variance to where you're getting like Sephiroth's div cards and all these other divination orb div cards, where you or whatever other expensive div card you want, insane cards, you name it, like potentially apothecary. I mean, I dropped it on apothecary last league. Stuff like that. Like I would rather use that with its variance, because no 2 hours feel the same than just slugging away knowing I'm making 5 divines an hour and I have 20 hours to go. If that makes sense. Like it could easily be a personal thing, but I highly agree with that.
Combat. And at the time, the reason why what we were talking about there is, as opposed to the kind of more MMO style combat that you had back then, which was like very like just everything's on cooldown, like you have a million abilities and it's just kind of like one thing after other, that sort of cooldown rotation, like sort of slower paced combat that you had from the MMOs at the time. And was that all of them, or did I say 4? I can't quite remember now. Where was I up to? Did I miss one?
Maybe, I think so.
No, right. So there was the other one. The other one was a deep,
you said the loot and the action
customization.
combat and the trading.
Yeah. So a deep system of character customization. So effectively, you need enough depth in the way that you build your characters to make it so that you're willing to play through the same character. So not through the same character, through the game again, but with a different build, so that can still be interesting to you.
And this is why people have 10,000s of hours in PoE 1.
Really have as much. But one thing D2 did have was the concept of the ladder reset, which is effectively like the fresh economic start. And that concept was ultra important because, and once again, if you're doing ladder resets, then you need to, have the ability for your character to be different every time. There needs to be lots of build variety and things that you can do, so that you feel like you're having a different experience each time as well. So those are kind of the like 5 pillars that we had. And I think that really like at this point, the one that I think a lot of companies still don't have, the ones that I think that companies still often don't do, one of them is they're really afraid to do full economic resets where there's absolutely zero progress that carries on between the leagues. That's something that, so a lot of companies are doing seasonal content now, but the thing that after they do the first one that players will always say is, oh, we want you to have some way to skip the campaign, we want to have some way to like, to blah, 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 keep, right? They're going to say that, right? But I think it's actually ultimately long-term very harmful, because it means that like when you have a full economic reset, it means that new players can join your game and not feel like they're behind everyone. Like they're behind everyone in terms of knowledge, but they're not behind everyone in terms of like, physically speaking, everyone who starts a Path of Exile League is on the same playing field, apart from what they know about the game. So I think that's super important. So that's one that a lot of companies still aren't doing. But the other one as well that a lot of companies...
On that note, another advantage that the full reset has is, and we use Diablo of course as a case study, is the simple fact that by by being able to skip the campaign in Diablo, what does the early game of a season look like? I'll tell you what. It looks like all you're doing is doing the exact same content you would be doing in the end game, except you're getting worse loot for it, way worse loot, and you just have to do some more of this content so you can upgrade your gear to do some more of the same content. Whereas with PoE, and this is why I am against campaign skips. With PoE, you basically have the campaign where when you get good at it, you don't take much time at all, but it allows you to get to a point where you have all these moving parts you can already fiddle with the moment you're out of the campaign to deal with the end game. You're already like level 60 something. You already have 3 ascendancies on under your belt. You have items you can use, not the strongest bases, but you really strong bases. Maybe the 3rd strongest, I think you already have access to at that point. You have access to most unique items that you might want to use in your build. You have access to all these things from the moment you finish the campaign, and then you start doing the grind that you would do for hours and hours on end. But having that, even if you spend like 3 hours or 2 hours twinking the campaign and whatnot, it has that breaking gameplay to where in your mind you did something different. There's a disconnect in like how you feel grinding the content you were just grinding on your other character or whatever, and what you're doing now. Whereas with D4 level 1, you're hopping into Hell Tides and you're just going to sit there for hours until you're level whatever, and you enter Torment, and then you sit in Hell Tides some more until you're level whatever, then you go up with Torment. Then like once you're now in Torment or whatever, you can now deal with like some other new activities that were not available to you otherwise. But that is kind of there is no, you're still doing the exact same grinding you would be doing, just for significantly worse reward early on, and that is not a good feeling in my opinion. Whenever I have to level up a new character in D4, it is such a mental burden. But in PoE, I just load up a new character. I find more of an issue with like having to figure out the what character to delete so I can create my next character, than the actual leveling progress in PoE versus like Diablo, and how much of a block it is when I need to level a new character. And I know that I'm just doing like, let's say, regular dungeons or nightmare dungeons, but with worse rewards, or I'm not leveling up my glyphs or whatever else. It just feels worse.
Don't do is item trade with no binding of items, and so that really keeps the value. And a lot of companies are very afraid to do that. Like it's one of those things I think is ultra important. Like it leads to so many problems, and people look at the problems and they assume that those problems are worse than the benefit. And I think that's partly because the benefit is a little bit more intangible. Like it's harder to kind of appreciate the value that players feel, like because it's kind of like it doesn't even kind of matter initially, and it's like one of those longer term kind of like concerns. But I think that is really valuable, and it's something that I wish more games would do.
I'm actually really happy you said something about that, because I think it's one of the things where like I look at you guys, I also I play Warframe. That's one of my big games, right? And you guys are very similar in that, with like being able to trade loot and whatnot. So many games stay away from that. And I think it adds so much more value, not only to what the player finds in the game, but like
a daunting task in your PoE life is knowing if an item that you dropped is valuable or not. And I get it. Like I was a new player not too long ago, like literally just 2 years ago I started playing PoE, 2022 December, give or take, Sanctum League basically. And I understand how much of a mind tax it is not knowing what is valuable and what is not. To be fair, like even to this moment, there are still items that I would look at and think maybe it's not valuable, but for the most part, I understand now. But it is important to have said items that a new player might ignore, and then an experienced player will know, oh shit, I can actually make money from this, or vice versa. A new player will pick up thinking it's valuable, meanwhile it's just, it's bad. Okay, this base has T1. I don't know. What are examples of things that look good but are actually bad? I don't know. I can't think of any off the top of my head. But anyways, all this to say, it gives you a sense of progression when you get better at identifying those better items, because at the end of the day, when you think about Path of Exile, it is a game that really rewards knowledge. Like, compare how much currency you make now that you know things versus when you didn't know things. Astronomical difference, literally. You're making you are so much more efficient now. You feel rewarded for your time put into the game. Whereas with D4, everything's kind of just given to you on a silver platter, so there's basically no motivation to seek out any information that is not just given to you, because it doesn't really give you an edge. It's like, who needs to know the layout of this thing when I'm going to still get the same amount of reward at the end or whatever, you know? You don't need to know the layout of the map, obviously, in most games, but that's just like an example.
I don't really know how to put my finger on it exactly, but I think it actually does have something to do with those concurrent player numbers, and it's something that brings players back because they know, no matter what, when they're playing the game, that, you know, there's really nothing keeping them from reaching the rest of the players that might be ahead of them.
Right.
Every league start is a challenge.
That's cool.
Can you do better than your last one? At least to me.
Where was I at? So, you guys already have a successful game with PoE. You guys could have just visually updated it and continued to grow it. Why did you guys choose to make a second game, making PoE 2? And also, why did you choose to support both?
So it's funny because we kind of creeped towards it in a strange way. Initially, the plan literally was, okay, we need to visually update Path of Exile 1. But there was a very specific thing that was that was the big problem at the time. And effectively what it is that the rigs for the player characters, that's like one of the first things that you'd need to make in a game, right? Because everything, like all the character animations and all the skills, but also all the armors need to be attached to them and all that stuff. Like all that stuff kind of goes on top of that. So once you've done that, it's something that you really can't change without redoing, you know, everything related to characters. And we were like, okay, these rigs are from 2006. The people who made them at the time were very inexperienced.
Yeah.
Like, you know, we didn't know what we were doing. We also, every player character had its own rig, which means that we were doing 7 times the amount of work to support everything that we should have needed to do. And just the overall, there were just so many problems with them. So like, okay, in order to make the graphics of PoE 1 better, we're going to have to change these rigs. So we make new rigs and we're like, okay, now we're going to have to re-rig all the armors. But if instead of re-rigging armors, like, surely we should visually update the armors instead of just re-rigging the old ones, right? Because like, obviously, you know, it's like, well, you know, we're doing much work anyway. We might as well just create new items because, you know, those will look better and everything will be better than that. And, you know, we have to make new animations for everything. So rather than, you know, like remaking old skills, I mean, effectively we might as well be making new ones, right? That are cooler and better. Yeah. So effectively, you know,
we get so many new shit that's like.
And at some point we're like, okay, but like the graphics of the starting areas in PoE 1, you know, we like the first act is like a particularly ugly. We really should like make a new act 1, you know, like you know, so to
it just keeps going.
Well, you know, like by the time you got these great looking characters, but then they're in old environments, like that looks bad. So we really should update that as well. So effectively, like we just kept on like more and more things. Kind
and then you realize, oh shit, this isn't Path of Exile 1 anymore.
Turned into a new game.
Yeah, sort of did like that. And so when we even announced Path of Exile 2, we announced it as like, okay, we're going to have 2 campaigns, because at that point we decided to redo the whole campaign. We're going to have 2 campaigns, but it's going to have a shared end game, so that it's like effectively still the same game. And that was kind of what we announced initially in 2019, because at that point we were still in the mindset of like, we're effectively just, this is effectively just a giant expansion to Path of Exile that we're making here. And then even later than that, then at some point, the point when it really split into 2 games was the point when I started wanting to make some much more serious changes to gameplay feel and to balance and so on. I don't think those necessarily like came from a specific philosophy that differed from PoE 1 or anything. It was just that like, in order to make these skills feel good, I feel like I need to make these changes kind of thing. And at some point, we started getting a lot of like...
it doesn't feel like PoE 1 anymore.
especially from like QA, who are still mostly working on PoE 1, and like some of the designers who are working exclusively on PoE 1, we started to just get a lot of like, oh man, you can't really change this. Like it's changed, like, you know, because, you know, people are used to this and it won't be compatible with what people are doing. Like there was all sorts of, we just started to get a lot of like pushback on things where like, okay, it's going to break the game if you make this change. It's going to break the game if you make that change due to existing stuff, and like just various things like that. Just like lots of concern about that from inside the team. And so I started thinking about it, and I kind of just thought like, you know what, like at this point, we're effectively remaking everything. We might as well just go all the way and actually split the games apart from each other. And then as soon as we did that, it immediately was very freeing because we could suddenly make a whole bunch of decisions that I guess we would have been, you know, like as I said, that were hard to make just because of a lot of pushback within the studio about things. And like those people, it's like, well, if it's a different game, it's like a whole different question, right? We don't have to worry about all the stuff from the past. You know, we can make a lot of changes, and that's sort
I'm
of how
so
we ended
glad
up
they
with
made that decision, by the way.
But I mean, at the same time, there was also this
Props to them.
idea that like we did need to make Path of Exile in order to really make Path of Exile grow to sort of a much larger audience. We really did have to, like, there are a lot of people who've tried Path of Exile in the past who effectively, you know, like
Me.
fell off it for whatever reason. Maybe they didn't like the combat, or maybe it was too complex, or maybe they didn't like this, that, or the other thing.
6 years
like,
straight, I've tried the game
yeah,
and,
sure.
and quit.
Yeah. So it's effectively
Lol.
by putting a line in the sand and saying, okay, we're making a sequel now. It effectively means all those people who tried it before and maybe didn't like it are like, okay, well maybe I'll give this another shot now, because you know you were saying that you have made a substantially different game here, which obviously we have. So you know it's a time for then all of those people who tried the game in the past to come back and give it another shot. I think that is another important element of, you know, making a sequel like that. Yeah, I was just saying that's kind of how we ended up where we are.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good. All right. So on that, actually, because
I love how
we're gonna get into. Some
I love
PoE
how
questions.
Jonathan gets a simple question, and then he just runs with it, and he runs with it in the most fascinating ways, where you get information that you didn't even know you wanted.
Here now, but from my perspective, I got some time playing the game. I'm a big ARPG fan. I grew up playing Diablo 2. I had a cracked version on my mom's computer. She could barely pull me off of it any chance she got. But from my perspective, this game feels like a true evolution in the genre. It's the pacing, the combat, the dodge mechanics. What were you guys trying to accomplish with this? Because it does feel like an evolution. It doesn't play like any other ARPG I've played before.
So it really was an effort to make that combat feel just like, yeah, just much better. And I think one of the things, so whenever we launch a Path of Exile 1 expansion, it's always very interesting to see what people say outside of the Path of Exile community. Like obviously the Path of Exile community gets all hyped about whatever the next big thing is, but it's very interesting to see other communities, because
It just says no matter what, we get hyped.
Usually the top comment will be like, oh, you know, I tried this, but the combat feels so dated and bad and all that sort of stuff, right? Effectively, like, it's interesting to see what it is that people who don't play PoE dislike about PoE, because that's a very interesting thing to think, okay, this is the stuff that we can potentially improve in order to get it better. And like, I love action games, you know, like I'm just a big action game player. So I just wanted to make something that to me felt like a decent action game. You know, like I want to kind of be able to have the best of both worlds. I want to be able to feel like an action RPG as far as like all the stats and like, you know, interesting stuff like along the traditional like looter type game.
Build diversity,
but I also want... Yeah, but I also want you to be able to approach it like an action game, you know, where you know, you've got mechanics that you can dodge, that you can understand, like, you know, you can see everything's got wind up, so you can see like you know, what's going to hit you. You can learn mechanics of bosses. Like you can effectively I think if your character is weaker, you can overcome some degree of that in PoE 2 with play skill. But then at the same time, if you're if you don't have as much play skill, you also can overcome some of that by getting more stats and doing more grinding. So ideally, we can kind of get the best of both of those worlds. But yeah, I mean, it really just comes down to, I'm an action game fan. I want us to be good on the level of an action game.
Yeah. So actually, this lines up perfectly with this. So one of the things that I noticed actually getting hands-on time with the game was that every encounter that I got into, regardless of whatever character I played or how far I got into the game or how much gear I got or skills or whatever it might be, every single encounter felt meaningful. And it was in a way, and I was talking to some of the other creators at the event, and I said that this doesn't feel like a second monitor game anymore. Because like Path of Exile, Diablo, these are games I got YouTube up on the second monitor, I'm watching something else, and it demanded my attention.
His definition of a second monitor game is kind of interesting. Now, I wouldn't I would call something like RuneScape a second monitor game, not PoE. Like, yeah, you can have stuff you're watching on the side, maybe not the most attention seeking shows, but like, calmer shows where it's okay to miss a scene or two as you just grind your ARPG. Yeah. But I wouldn't call them second monitor games. They're still on your first monitor, you just have stuff happening on the second monitor. But I do get his point.
At every given moment, otherwise I very easily could lose, even though it was fighting something that otherwise I could probably overpower. Oddly, it reminds me of Elden Ring in a lot of ways,
Right.
because it's just that engaging.
Mm-hmm.
How did you guys manage to create that kind of feel? Was that the intention, and what kind of impact do you guys think that's going to have on the gameplay overall?
So we really do want to make sure that, especially the first time you play through the campaign, that the combat isn't. And I mean, I think that the word around here that often says we don't want the combat to feel trivialized. Like we want it actually, yeah, like as you said, we want it to feel meaningful. And this has been a really big tension point in development a lot of the time because I guess there's several reasons for that. So one of them is that if you're not expecting that as a player, that is like a very big different game feel.
Yeah.
Like it's a huge deal, right? So, and like that's one of those things that I feel like it's really important that people understand is that like that yeah, like you're gonna have to concentrate on the bosses. Like the bosses shouldn't be you just walk up and kill them in 5 seconds. You need to like observe the mechanics and engage with them and like understand them and like like it might take you a couple of deaths before you kill a boss. That kind of thing. And I think that like yeah, I think from a designer's perspective as well, you kind of want like you put all this effort into designing a boss. Like you don't want a player to just walk in and be like, oh yeah, I just killed it in 2 seconds. Like nothing you did mattered. You know what I mean? Like so on that level, we just want the combat to feel like it.
I feel like being a game dev is
but at the
wild
same time,
because you have to deal with that, and it's not like it's a bad thing that is happening. It's just you can put so much effort into a boss fight and then people just blow it up in 2 seconds and they don't see anything. And that might be the norm in the game. Like for example, Uber Lilith in D4. Nobody actually is playing that fight thinking I'm going to do all the mechanics and we're just going to know. You wait until you have the DPS to just blow her up, and then you just blow her up and you try to interact with the fight as minimally as you can. And I'm not saying that of course is not what you would want from a boss fight. Though to be fair, Lilith was just a very poorly designed fight to begin with, so whoever that is should be hiding their face.
do need a feeling of progression through the game, and you do need to make sure that at some point you get to the point where you feel much more powerful than the content. Now, I think the difference is with PoE 2 versus 1 is that the point where you reach that is a bit later than it was in PoE 1. And the other thing as well is that people have so much knowledge of PoE 1 at this point that they can reach that trivialization point
much
very quickly right from the start of the game. Like obviously we've added like lots of content over the years and all sorts of stuff like that. So it's kind of gotten to the point now where PoE 1 combat really just doesn't kind of like matter very much overall, unfortunately. So yeah, we were trying to get back to a situation where the combat wasn't trivialized, but then once again, there's a lot of tension, right? Like as we are doing testing on closed betas and so on, you
don't want too much tension.
Like, oh, effectively, ultimately they're finding the game too hard, right? For their level of concentration that they want to put into it. And so we really have to do a fine line here. And so ideally what we can achieve is that if you are finding something too hard, you can go and grind. You can get a level of power from what you're from the stuff that you look around the world, get more stuff, and sort of come back. And that's like a thing that you can do. But ideally, we're in a situation where the amount of that you do kind of depends on how hard you're finding the content. So ideally, you kind of like do side content to the point where you.
How much time do y'all think you're gonna spend?
Difficulty with the combat that you feel.
How much time do y'all think you're gonna spend in PoE 2 before you get to T16 maps, assuming there's T16 like waystones and whatnot? Because we've seen red wasteland. I know we saw tier 14, so I would assume tier 16 is probably the peak. Because whenever I think about this question, I think if Acts 1 through 3 are supposed to take 25 hours for a new player, if I want to be, if I want ego it, I can say, okay, it's going to take me like 18 hours, but realistically, could it would take less, but to be safe, let's just say 20 hours. then the second 3 would take like 5 hours, maybe less. Because I mean, you have your build going at that point. You're level whatever 45. Then you start with white maps, and then you have all these problems to solve, and a whole lot of gear making, like gearing, like problems to fix, right? You need to fix your res. You need to make sure you're healthy enough from gear because there's no life on tree. You need to make sure you have armor, ES, whatever the defense you're going for. You need to make sure you have your maybe mind over matter, mana, whatever. You need to make sure your offenses are sorted out, your defenses, and all of that will take a lot of work. So I'm thinking personally that T16 would be doable in, and if I'm not going to go with game time and just like time from launch, i.e. how many days, how many real days do I think it'll take me, I probably would put it at maybe 4 days. I think, no, let's say 3 days. I think 3 days is a safe-ish bet. 3 to 4 days in any case, thereabouts. Now, if it's based on hours of gameplay, I would say we're probably looking at 50s. Thereabouts. Now, I might be overestimating the difficulty and all the challenges that we would have to deal with, but I'd rather overestimate than underestimate it, I think.
Feel like you need to reach before you're feeling comfortable.
I got
And
you. Okay.
it was actually a realization that we had relatively recently, because there was actually an interesting thing. You mentioned Elden Ring. There's actually an interesting thing I noticed with Elden Ring, which is that if I'm playing Elden Ring and I try to kill a boss and I can't kill it,
Well, that's
then
that's the final boss right there.
And do some random side content until I feel powerful enough to come back. And that was something that Path of Exile 2 players in the closed betas were not doing. And I was kind of like, Jesus Christ, it's a fly. Sorry. That was something that Path of Exile 2 players in the closed betas weren't doing. And I was kind of, well, why is this? Like, why is it that people just slam their face against a boss again and again and again in PoE 2, where in a game like Elden Ring, you'd go off and you'd and you would go do something else. And the thing that I realized is that in Elden Ring, you have a map that invites you to to the idea that there's other stuff out there that you could find, and that there's all sorts of stuff on there, and you kind of realize, oh, you know what, there's other stuff I could be doing if I'm not enjoying this. And Path of Exile 2 initially, the map didn't really kind of bring across any of that. So recently what we decided to do is make sure that on the map there's like icons for all of the like.
Here is something that I think deserves to be recognized. GGG's ability to break down why a game appeals in certain ways and why people are, and the way people interact with games is top notch. Like what he just said about understanding why it is people were not going to explore or just hitting their head against the boss wall. That is, I think, a skill that many game studios do not have, at least not even nearly the capacity that they have over there at GGG. And I think, big props to that, because it's clearly showing in the way people interact with their game versus how they want people to interact with the game. They don't have as many cases as some other game companies where people are just interacting with systems in a way they do not intend to. Diablo. In fact, I'm going to call their name Diablo. Like, what on earth were they doing creating a necromancer and not giving support to minions? The fuck is that? Huh? Make it make sense. Anyways, besides the point, let's continue the video.
Side content and little extra things that we've put around the area, so that when you open that map, you kind of feel like, oh, there's so much stuff here that I could be doing. And so then it kind of just reminds you of the fact that, if you're having trouble with a boss, you're like, okay, well, you know what? I'm just going to go off and do something else. And if you do that, you will get meaningful upgrades, because we've also made sure that all of that content has interesting like fixed drops or just like little things that they can do that will give you a meaningful upgrade that will potentially make you stronger to allow you to defeat that boss. So that was something that we
You can
it's
tell
an
Jonathan
obvious
is really
connection between, like, you know,
thinking about
how
defeating
people
the
are finding
fly
bosses
boss right
frustrating,
there.
to like being, oh, we need to improve the map. But you know, like that ended up, I sort of realized that, like, you know, why is it different between these different games, and I think that was very important. So adding that has actually improved the experience, I think, quite a lot.
Yeah.
Jesus
You
Christ.
get.
This is this is one brave fly.
Oh man, it's actually it's so crazy that you say that about the map, because the wild thing is I was thinking about it while I was actually.
Am I the only one that gets very distracted by the fly so much so that I almost stop paying attention to what they're saying? The fly is very distracted.
Playing the game, because I had gotten to a boss that absolutely handled me, and then part of me was sitting there thinking to myself, I'm like, I can beat this by skill, right? Like I can just pay attention, learn the mechanics,
the ego of every gamer,
and do my best not
it
to
can
get hit,
bleed, so therefore it
beat
can
the boss
die
that way. And then I opened the map and I saw there was like a bunch of mini bosses that I hadn't even touched yet, and I was like, well, let's go ahead and go around here. I'll probably get some skill gems or some uncut you know, support gems off of them, be able to build something out, maybe find some better equipment or whatever, and then come back a little bit later. I did that, sure enough, got better support gems, got better higher end skill gems and some better equipment, came back, handled the boss. It was still tough. I'm not going to say like I didn't have to try anymore. I still had to try. But you know, it felt a little bit more measured because I was actually dealing enough damage to take it down within a realistic amount of time, right? And
well, I'm really glad to hear that that worked, because that was my thesis for how we were going to fix this problem. And you know, yeah, I'm really glad to hear that worked. But the other thing as well is, Jesus Christ, go away!
Somebody get a fly swatter.
You like smelling here or something?
Yeah.
Like,
When was the last time you left the office, man?
So anyway, what was I saying? So yeah, so the other thing as well, though, is it really did force us to create a lot more of that side content throughout the game as well, and I think that really helped, because having all those like kind of little interesting encounters has just made the game feel so much more alive. You know, like there's just there was tons of cases where we did things like we would so it's funny because, like, so we've got all these bosses in the game, there's like tons of them everywhere, but then we also have things that I guess like they're still sort of bosses. I think if you look at a lot of games, you would still consider them to be bosses. But effectively, they're like hard-coded rare monsters that have specific abilities. And a lot of the time what we've done is we've taken things from like later in the game and moved them earlier to use them as like a boss in that sort of area, things like that. So, for example, I don't know if in the forest you found that that witch in the witch's hut.
Yes.
Was that a thing you found?
Yeah,
you did.
Yeah.
All right.
That's where
So
I got some like leveled up potions or flasks.
Yeah, exactly. So that witch actually comes from Act 5. So we that was just one of the regular monsters from Act 5. We took it down. We added this like frost breath ability.
Yeah.
And then like, you know, added a little bit of stuff around, like, you know, you walk in and there's the cauldron and then she disappears and goes behind you, and like, you know, a few things like that. And it's like really quickly we were able to create a little encounter like that. And if you're in Act 1, a random Act 5 regular monster feels like a boss to you.
Yeah.
So that's like just like a nice way to just add little bits of kind of like we've kind of done little things like that all over the place, just like little touches that add.
I can't wait to play this game.
Just make the game world feel a lot more alive, and allow us to drop specific items. So yeah, that one, once again, that one's designed to specifically give you potions.
We have
but
a
actually,
week,
another
give or
take.
take.
That one, which is that I don't know if you found in the previous area there was a little camp with some zombies that drops a skill gem. You might have missed it.
Yeah. No, I got it.
Okay, so basically, so if you miss that one, then the reward that you would have gotten from that one will also drop from the witch in the next area.
Oh, okay, all right.
So effectively what this means is kind of like a catch-up account where we can effectively say, okay, there's all this random optional stuff around, but if you miss some of it, then we can forward some of those drops on to a later point, so that we can still sort of make sure that at the beginning you sort of have a reasonable, like, we want to try, what we're trying to do there is we're trying to make sure that the bottom of you know, the people who are the most unlucky effectively still have a reasonable experience. So that's the kind of thing that we can do to there's like little tricks like that we can do to make that more interesting.
And you know something very interesting about decisions like these is that if he wasn't as passionate as he was and as vocal, like if he didn't bring it up, if he didn't talk about it in interviews and whatnot, we would have no idea. We would have no idea that they went this deep in their thought process for these random encounters. We might have just thought, oh, we just got lucky, or oh, unlucky, we didn't get this or whatever else. We might not have realized that we were, and because the drops are potentially dropped from different events depending on when you find it, it's like you might not even realize that the game is literally always going to give you this drop at this point. It's just, oh, you got lucky, you got this gem and this gem and this, because all the encounters you missed just added up on that one boss. But like it kind of goes to show the level of details they think about, you know. It's insane. Appreciated, but insane. Like, as a dev, I probably wouldn't have thought about that. I'll be like, it's such a creative solution to a problem you might not even realize would be a problem until players complain about it. But not only did they think about the problem, they thought about the solution, and a very good solution at that. I do think about like ways that could be abused and whatnot. You know, you take the later one and come back to the beginning and take the first one. I don't know how they deal with that, but they probably also thought about it, you know. So I wouldn't put it past them.
Incredibly smart, and it worked. So there you go. I'm happy your plan worked there. So actually, along with like missing content and stuff like that, I am the quintessential new player for Path of Exile. I've tried the game like 6 times over the last 6 years. I fell off every single time. It wasn't until Settlers of Kalgur that finally got me, mostly because I could respec using gold. Right. That's really what it was. I couldn't tell you how many times I had bricked a character just because I couldn't figure out how to build. I get like to the end of the campaign or near the end of the campaign and just get smashed. You guys have made a lot of changes that have made the game far more accessible. It's obvious that you're trying to aim this towards newer players. How do you guys manage to balance something that is going to be good for new players while still keeping the game?
On that note, I'm very appreciative of the fact that even though they are making it more new player friendly, they're not just absolutely slaughtering the complexity of the game. They are not, because I've seen this a lot in like that the skill tree is still too daunting. It should be simpler. If like people are getting overrun by even the Paragon system, how they're supposed to, you know, get into that. And in my head, it's like, if you don't want to put in the time to learn the skill tree, which you don't have to, of course, then you have to be okay with following a build guide, which from someone who has done the work to understand said skill tree. And if you don't want to do that, then in my opinion, and I have to stress it's my opinion, I think it's okay that the game is just not for you at that point. You know, there still, like, you still have D4 as that simple option for you and whatnot. You still have, I want to say, Last Epoch, which, because it's also pretty simple compared to PoE. It's like, I think at that point, like, it's okay if the game is just not for you.
The same for those hardcore players that they've come to love for Path of Exile.
Yeah, so it really comes down to trying to remove what's called incidental complexity. So effectively, you have what you might call necessary complexity, which is effectively, in order to get the depth that you want, there's a certain amount of complexity you need to be able to make the system
skill trees
work at all.
Skill tree is an example of good at complexity.
Incidental complexity, which is effectively things that are...
Incidental complexity, I would assume, is like choosing the type of craft you wanted to go in PoE 1, where you can put, let's say, a meta craft on your item through the crafting bench, but you can also do that through what's it called, menagerie, beast crafting. You could also do that. Or you wanted to basically you want to get one mod and there's 10 different steps. There's like 2, okay, not 10, but like 3 different steps that do the exact same thing that you can use. And it's like, it's not bad that they're there, but it could easily be seen as unnecessary, you know. It's just unnecessary complexity at that point.
Complicated, where simplifying them doesn't change the depth of the system at all.
You go from 4 different ways to be able to do this one thing to just the one way to do the one thing. You can still do the one thing, but now there isn't that I won't say artificial, but there isn't that unnecessary bloat to it.
And a great example of that is the way that skill gems work, where previously skill gems were on items. It meant that every time you upgraded an item, you had to worry about your skill gems. That didn't change anything about the options that you had for how to combine skill gems or anything like that. So effectively, I would class that as incidental complexity, because it's something that made the game more complicated, but it didn't change anything about what you could actually achieve in the system in terms of like how you like what the ultimate way that you know the combos you can do, anything about how you build.
It kind of did, but it also kind of didn't. For example, if your best in slot chess piece is an item that requires 250 strength, you're not going to realistically say, oh, I'm gonna just have 5 blue sockets in here or whatever, unless you decide to do the socket trick. Like it's just not happening. And if you did go the socket trick route, you would spend an obscene amount of currency in the form of jeweler orbs and whatnot to do it. So in more cases than not, it's forced you to a situation where you would have to use different support gems just to reduce the cost. And then maybe when you had more currency, you could then really shoot for the exact support gems you wanted.
The character, all it did was just get in the way. So effectively, what we're trying to do is
I don't know if I wouldn't say that was fun, but
not making the game.
But it did motivate you to use support gems you might not otherwise have used
deeper,
especially in a League Star scenario,
while keeping all the stuff that is necessary to make the game interesting and have interesting depth. So if we can do that, then I think that we will have something which new players are going to find a lot more friendly. So yeah, like the skill system being a great example. I mean, things like making respecs easier and gold and stuff like that stuff all really helps. There's just a lot of these things, and really, like what we were doing before, some of that stuff just wasn't really necessary.
Yeah.
It was not improving the game to do it that way. So the answer there is effectively, I believe that you can have it both ways, but at the same time, like I never want to make a decision that's going to make the game less deep. And it's very interesting because obviously that can be something that can mean different things to different people. So here's an interesting one that was one recently that we changed, which was that we changed from 5 flasks down to from having 5 flask slots that you could do whatever you wanted with, to having just a life slot and a mana flask slot, and
getting rid of the piano keys.
Yeah, exactly. So you could look at that. Obviously, we're trying to solve a real problem because that one actually came out of the fact that whenever I was actually watching new players play, the thing that they would screw up the most was using flasks. They would press the wrong button, they'd do one that was empty. There was all sorts of stuff that they'd be doing there that just wasn't that was causing them to die. And I was like, at the same time, you've also got the whole flask piano thing, which is not great. And but the thing is, when we first said,
fun fact, if you ever have to do flask piano or anything similar in any games, and all you need is an MMO mouse and it's solved. Like on my mouse, I have 12 keys and I just use 5 of them for my flask when I play PoE. So on League Star scenarios, you just see me pressing like 3, 4, 5, which are, well, not 4 and 5 are beside each other, so it's very straightforward if I remember to press my flasks. 3 is a bit out of the way, but I tend to remember to press 3 more ironically. But in any case, it makes life easy compared to trying to do it on the keyboard, which is, at least to me, it's a very big pain.
Well, what if we just had 1 mana and one life slot? The first reaction to that is, oh, you're simplifying the game, you're dumbing it down, this kind of thing. This is something that we have to be worried about. So then it's like, okay, well, how can we have a system where we can bring back some of the interesting build choices that you felt like you had before, while not bringing back all of the annoying garbage that people had to do and all the stuff that was making new players fail.
Yeah, the physical actually having to use the potions part.
Yeah, exactly. So that's when we thought about, okay, well, what do people really want the variability of their flasks to be able to achieve? And the answer is they want solutions to things like getting frozen and fire, burning and this kind of stuff. They generally using those flask slots for things that aren't even life and mana. So then we're like, okay, so we're going to add this new system called charms, and they automatically trigger, and they still give you some interesting build choices, but they don't require the physical dexterity of having to, of having to hit all these different buttons all the time and knowing which one to press. And so that's another great example of okay, we can do something which is we've got a way to keep the depth, but we've also got a way to simplify things down and make things easier. And along the way, I actually think it actually improved some things about build choices too, because a flask with the mods on flasks are much more important to think about choosing between when you've only got 1 flask of each type. If you've got 5 flasks, then the mods kind of fade into irrelevance because it's like,
Yeah.
well, who cares? I'll just make it blue, and whatever mods I get, I don't really care. And like, sure, maybe there's a couple that people seek, like instant healing and that kind of thing. But now when it's like you've got one life flask, it's like, okay, you really care about what mods those are, and like there are different choices now about like, well, what am I prioritizing?
What I actually am very curious about is if in a situation like, let's say you're going mind over matter, you really care about your mana on what's it called? Your mana pool, but not so much your life pool. Maybe there's a way to go low life even, and you're reserving all your life or whatever else, and you really don't care about life. Is there a way to, instead of using life and mana, go like double mana or like double life if you don't care about mana, like in the case of like the Infernalist and and the Infernal Flame Ascendancy and just stuff like that? Is there are there like customization options for people who only care about one or only care about the other? Very curious about that.
About what I want in that flask. So I think that actually improves depth in some ways as well. So that's just kind of a long rant about a very specific system there to give you a kind of example. But effectively, that's the kind of design process we go through when we're thinking about like how can we improve things for new users without actually breaking any, like removing any depth for high-end players while still having all these build choices that are going to matter in the long term.
So I think that's really smart because the thing is that looking at the charm system for the potions specifically is that you guys not only simplified it, but then you actually ended up creating more depth in a system simultaneously. So not only did you make it more accessible for a newer player, but also now more seasoned players have to balance, okay, well,
I'm also very curious as to see what's the charm uptime on charges looks like, because some of those numbers were wild. For freeze charm, it was using 80 charges out of 80 charges, and if you've played PoE 1, you know just how insane 80 charges is to like get. And it's not like you can overcap it. It's 80 over 80. So the moment you use it, you're back to zero. You have to get that up to. So I'm very curious to see how that actually feels, because it's very possible, oh, you got frozen one time, it's cured you, made you immune, that's chill, then you get frozen again, and it's like, oh, you are not nowhere near ready, I'm
going to be doing this. I want to make sure that I have fire resist, or I want to make sure that I have frost resist, or whatever it is, and I have to fill whatever gaps with my build that I have. Well, that's how I'm going to, use my charms. Now they're hunting for charms, or they have charms that are filling up their stash tabs and whatnot. And I think that's really smart. That's smart. I like that a lot. So as another one of my like new player things is that when I always came back in to try Path of Exile again, obviously every single time it was around a new league mechanic. And this last time that I got through, the Sellers of Kalgur was very easy to kind of get used to. It's something similar you've seen in a lot of other games and whatnot, so it was pretty familiar to me. But when I actually finally got to the end game for the first time, got to maps and everything like that, I was yet again lost, and my only solution was like 2 or 3 hour guides from Zizrain or somebody like that, right? And I'm like, it's not really what I wanted to do. I try to play games as blind as I can, and I was wondering, when it comes to the end game, do you guys have any plans to maybe nudge new players into the direction of maybe end game solutions that are best for them, or are there ways for players to be able to discover that?
So I think that the end game, just the core system in PoE 2 is a bit more understandable and discoverable. And the way you kind of see, we've got the.
On that note, he does bring up a fair point. When you think about like PoE endgame to a complete noob who has not seen any content about it, including like the reveal stream, they just know it exists through maybe friends or whatever. They're just like, okay, we're just going to play it and go completely blind. When you get to the end game, are there actually like, I want to say makeshift tutorial or a tutorial of sorts on what you should be doing to engage with the end game, or run this waypoint? I know in PoE 1 there's kind of like Karak, but we all know nobody actually reads, so you would have no idea. So but if it was a tutorial like the tutorial on the beach in Act 1, where it tells you, okay, pick up your gem, put it in your item, where it shows up on the screen as an overlay and tells you how to do whatever, I think that would be A lot more beginner friendly.
The map that sort of shows you what you can find, and so it really feels like you get more of a sense of discovery, and you kind of slowly get introduced to the different mechanics. Like you're going to start finding those sort of extra league mechanics. You know, like you're going to see them on the map before you get to them. You're going to be like, oh, what's this? You go there, you try it out, this kind of thing. Like you're not just going to randomly run into like 10 different weird mechanics that you've never heard of, like right from the get-go.
Which is a good
That
point.
allows us to kind of more slowly introduce those things.
What
And
the
all of those
fuck is
things, I think,
this?
have a much more considered ramp about how you get into them and how they go forward. You know, we can effectively make sure that there's tutorialization for them at the point where you encounter them for the first time. There's just a lot more that we can do around that. So I think the system itself is just a bit more amenable to making that ramp into the end game a little bit easier. But ultimately the end game is where the complexity does start to ramp up a little bit. You know, like that is something that you know is definitely just going to be the case. That's where you start to, you know, because like especially as we add more and more content to it, you know, that's where you're going to start to get all of these things sort of coming in. But as I said, there's a bit more of a consideration to just like, you know, how the ramp up works. Like I think the other thing as well is that if you just want to concentrate on one mechanic as well, that's something that you can do very easily in PoE 2. You can do that in PoE 1 as well. Yeah. But like the way that you do that, I think, is a little bit more obvious in PoE 2 as well, with the way we've got the tablets and the towers and stuff like that. Like I think that the
Thinking
notion
back,
of like,
I agree, because like in PoE 1, the way it would work is you need to progress your atlas, but you need to progress your atlas in a way where you're not going to run out of maps, and you're constantly getting new maps to continue getting more points to fill out. And then when you get to some equilibrium of nodes where you know, okay, this should give you enough map sustain to where you can keep doing this, only then do you start getting to the point where you start seeing the mechanic often. But not only that, because of the way that the chance to see the mechanic is split upon the tree, you might just have a 40% chance for like a good minute until you then have enough points to get that to 50 and 60 and 70 and so on and so forth. You know,
I'm gonna just do breaches and I'm gonna like, you know, try and.
So I agree that PoE 2 system on paper seems also a lot more friendly to that early on.
Different trees, that kind of also I think just splits the complexity out from it, you know, into separate areas. You don't have to like worry too much about the ones that you're not doing right now. So I think that sort of helps as well. So I'm hoping that will improve things. But I must say that the end game is where we've had the least amount of closed beta testing stuff done. Yeah. It's only recently that you know, we've been able to get people testing that at all, and so that means that we've got the least information about how new players react to that. So you know, that I think is going to be something that we'll find out more as we go into early access. Honestly, you know, like it's a sort of you know, it's very hard to get people in like a 1 week beta test to be able to get all the way to end game and like, you know, engage with that. And the people who get there are going to be most hardcore users anyway.
Yeah, so, then the game would be solved before it.
See how new users react to that end game system.
Let us see.
For the end game stuff, at least what I saw from like the presentations and whatnot, I'll immediately say I think the map system in general is like light years ahead of what it is for PoE 1. It's so much more like easy to read and understand and see what's going on.
9 days
in Path of Exile 1. And especially like the more like simplified skill tree for the maps as well. I think that helps out quite a lot. So Path of Exile seasons have always seen a lot of players come back. It seems that it's always an actual event, momentous occasion. There's a ton of people that file in. You got a bunch of people streaming it on Twitch. What do you guys think is the key to maintaining that long-term engagement that you guys see with Path of Exile?
So I think there's a few elements. So one of them is the thing that I already mentioned before about you know, the full economic reset being really important. But the next one is as well is that our just general view on maintaining a game, and I think this is something that the industry is more generally coming towards now, but only in the more recent years, is coming to the understanding that you don't want to keep players around forever. You want to give players a good experience that they're going to enjoy for, you know, like a few weeks, a month, maybe 6 weeks, something like that. You know, like some amount of time that's like bounded, and then you're happy to see them go to play other things, and then they, not in the knowledge that they're going to come back again later. Like you don't have to hang on to players forever, and I think that mindset is something we've had for quite a long time, and it's something that you know, just
it's been really good for PoE having that mindset.
Like, there was a period, you know, when the MMOs were big, where it's like, you know, everyone was trying to like hang on to players for the longest amount of time. They were all subscription models, so it was like the interest was, you know, keeping people around forever.
like it's been very good for them, because I can't tell you that I would still be playing PoE if I never took breaks from it. If right now I was playing PoE, I'd be very burnt out on it. I would even be as interested in PoE 2. Maybe I would be, but like not nearly as much, because I'm just like, oh god, I need to do this again. You know? Whereas when I start feeling burnt out on PoE, I'm just like, oh, you know what? That's it. We're done for this season. We'll be back next time. I try my best not to push it, and that is a big reason why I think I've been able to play PoE for as long as I have, because traditionally, like, I have issues repeating games. You know, I get out of a game typically done, but when it comes to PoE, I think it's done well.
And
I think we
it
all
takes a
played
while
WoW.
for that kind of
Right now,
it takes a while for that
right now with Diablo 4, for the past, I would say 2 seasons, I would just play like at best a week, at worst a few days, and I'm done. Why? I don't want to do Hell Tides anymore. It's the exact same shit. It's just a different toilet. Like, what are we talking about here? Like, I don't want. I got tired the last time, and it's not enough has changed where this feels any different. Like, it's the exact same thing. I remember how I feel like it's just boring. Basically, it just feels boring from day one.
Mindset to kind of go away. And it's sort of very interesting to see as well that and this is kind of a weird, maybe a weird connection, but in the mobile world, for some reason, I feel like they still treat players very much this way, that it's all about, like, they want to try and keep players forever. And as I said, I think that it's kind of something that is ultimately self-defeating, because players will just burn out. You really would much rather give them a satisfying experience than like, okay, you know what, I'm done with this, but I'm going to come back again later. So I mean, that's like one really important thing, I think, for sure.
So do you guys think that your monetization has something to do with that? Because like you guys have a very like player first approach to your monetization. You guys are, I mean, especially in the like free to play realm, you guys are, you know, a rare breed to say the least. How much of an impact do you think that has on it?
I mean, I definitely think that comes a lot to sort of player trust, you know, like by not being aggressive with monetization, by making sure that we, you know, everyone, what people,
by being as transparent as they are with monetization, because like, I'll give an example of in the interview with Gazi and DM. I think was it Ziggy D? I think it was actually Ziggy D, where he mentions a part of the reason, you know, you would still have 6 portals show up. One of them, even though it's not the first reason or anything, one of them is still, you know, MTXs were designed for 6, you know, yada yada, for MTX reasons. Like, being that transparent also does wonders for building player trust.
what we do feels fair. I think that it just means that, you know, players trust us, and they're much more likely to spend money just on the idea that you know I'm supporting the game that I'm enjoying playing. Yeah, look, I'm sure there are things that we could do that would like juice our monetization significantly beyond what we're doing now. But we wouldn't enjoy doing those things, and I think that ultimately be self-defeating. You know, it's much better to just do what we do. And honestly, like, monetization is something that, like, it's not our first thought when we're coming to design things. Like, our first thought is about designing the game, and then monetization really is like, okay, like, obviously we want to make some cool stuff there, but it's like, really the first thing is like, first make a good game, and then if the game is good enough, the hope is that players will want to support you.
What game company should be?
The hope is that players will want to support you in what you're doing. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of always been our view on it. And you know, it's funny, even at the start, so we started the game in 2006, like working on it, and at that time, free to play was really not a thing in the Western world. And the reason why we chose that is because we kind of thought, you know, well, we're not some big studio, we're just some random dudes in New Zealand, you know, like, if I don't think we can even get people to buy our game, and like, how would we even distribute it, and like all this stuff. Like, we were like, we couldn't even do this. So free to play felt like a way for us to be able to actually get an audience. But then the only examples that we had were all of the pay to win things that were going on in Asia at the time. So we were like, well, obviously nobody in the we were like nobody in the West would ever accept anything that was pay to win. Clearly, right? That's clearly not okay. It's kind of what we were thinking about at the time. So we were like, well, so obviously we need to do all of this cosmetic stuff that we do. So that was kind of like our thinking back then. And it's funny because it turned out that actually Western gamers will accept pay to win in a lot of cases. There are like a bunch of pay to win games that are successful in the West after all.
Mhm.
But our whole thesis at the time was like, you know, nobody would accept this. I mean, we wouldn't accept it, right? As players, like that's what we were thinking. So therefore, you know, that was the monetization model that we picked. Yeah, that was our thinking.
I think that in a lot of ways that the player first approach, not going the pay to win approach and things like that,
It's
used with
helped
many
them a
other
lot
games,
in
while
the
there have
long
been
run.
some successful ones that are out there. I think especially recently, you know, I'm not going to name any names or anything like that, but there's a lot of live service games that have come out that did lean on those pay to win systems, or they were a little bit too aggressive with their monetization. Maybe it's they monetize too many things, maybe they price things too high, or whatever it might be. Especially when there's games that are like parallels of each other, right? You'll have two games that are basically like the same thing, but one is, you know, way more expensive to play than the other one. I think that it builds a lot of customer loyalty more than anything else. And how do you think that loyalty like really plays into like the longevity of your game?
Give me a second. I shall be back in minutes. Give me so 1 minute. Okay, I'm back. Where were we?
Because
I mean, yeah,
like I said, I've seen a lot of these games basically
Sure.
come out and then fizzle out really quickly because of their monetization.
I mean, it absolutely does factor into it. Like, no doubt that it does. But I mean, you still at the end of the day have to make a good product, right? Like like the gameplay itself is king.
Yeah.
And I would say that the main thing you don't want is the monetization to be getting in the way of that. And monetization really can do that because the moment that you monetize something, the game designers are influenced by the existence of that
Yep.
thing. Like if you're selling a certain thing, like even if you don't even realize that you're doing it, you're going to be making game design decisions around making it so that people actually, buy that.
I think
So,
battle passes
yeah,
are probably the best example of that, where they like they're curbing all of the gameplay around how you progress a battle pass and things like that.
right. So, yeah, like that's why you've got to be so careful what you decide to monetize because it will affect what you do with other things, and I think that's almost inevitable to an extent that yeah, like it's like it is so dangerous to do that stuff because yeah, it just affects you so much. And I actually think there's a thing that in my mind is connected by the way here that uh it's not technically the same thing, but you know how a lot of live service games will have like, oh, like play this weekend and get double drops and play this weekend and get 2 times experience and this kind of like stuff like that. Like that stuff, I think really undermines the integrity of the game very significantly in the long term. Like that stuff, like sure, that weekend a bunch of people will turn up, but then I feel like then you're like when you don't have that, now you're much less likely to play. And so then you get into this death spiral of like, okay, well, the only time people turn up is when you start turning on double experience weekends. And so it's like now that's what the game is. And it's like you've kind of compromised the whole thing. So it's like even just that like stuff, that's not even really to do with monetization even. It's just like another thing where it's like it's an outside element outside of the gameplay.
You're using marketing to push gameplay.
Yeah, that shouldn't be there. And I really hate that stuff. And like, I mean, you like, people will all the time suggest this kind of stuff, right? Like, and you get this with like third-party publishers as well, where it's like you'll be publishing in a market and they're like, oh, we want to be able to run an event where blah blah blah, and I'm like, no, we just will not do it. Like in the long term, it just breaks things. Like, and they'll say, look, when we do it in this game, we get so much more players, and it's like, well, yeah, you do that weekend,
Yeah.
but like it's just not good in the long term. So we never do that stuff, and
That
I
is
think
such a
that,
good point, though.
once again, another one of those things that in the long term, I think you is much better for the health of the game.
I think that like generosity is always a good thing to have in games, and maybe it's not like double XP weekends or anything like that, because obviously I wholeheartedly agree with you that it has a negative impact more than a positive impact in a lot of cases. I brought up like Warframe like earlier. Every single day you log into Warframe, there's a reward that you get, no matter I think how long you play the game, and sometimes that reward could be like a 75% off of the premium currency for the game or something like that. So players always feel rewarded for logging in all the time. So I think there's different ways to go about it, but yeah, for sure that's it's definitely not the way. One thing that I definitely wanted to make sure to bring up as well is I'll be real, the carrying over all microtransactions from PoE 1
Huge
to PoE
move for
2
them.
is unheard of. It is most companies would probably see this as an opportunity to be able to double dip, to be able to have their existing audience pay for all new things all over again, start over fresh. In an entirely different
Like it is
microtransaction ecosystem.
so good.
What was your guys' motivation to, what a lot of companies would probably look at?
If you know it's available in both games, you're more incentivized to
So
buy
I think
it.
there's
Maybe
like 3 or maybe even 4 sort of things going on here. So one of them is having started from a position of this is an expansion to Path of Exile 1 certainly was part of the part of the initial sort of thinking there. But the other thing as well is that okay, so let's think about sequels to live service games that have existed. Now, every time that people have done sequels to live service games, and there's not like that many of them.
No.
A lot of the time, the sequels end up doing worse than the original game, and you have to go back a little bit for some of these. But effectively, like it's not always the case that the sequels do better. But what had been the case before for all the sequels to live service games was that the original game effectively took a back seat and no longer received any development, and effectively, was dead. And we're like, well, why do that, right? Like, why do that when we have something that there is an audience for that people love?
You're playing it today, right?
So I'm like, right. So I'm like, okay, well, in order, like, when you're a game designer, you think a lot in terms of incentives, right? It's like, okay, like, because like just as a general mindset as a game designer, you're like, okay, because every time you design anything, you're like, okay, what are the incentives for the player? I'm also thinking about like what are the incentives that we as a company will have, depending on how we structure this. So I'm like, okay, if we make sure that the microtransactions span across both games, that means that as a company, we will have an incentive to make sure that Path of Exile 1 continues to receive content, because we will still be getting monetization from that. Because the feeling that players will have is that PoE 1 is still getting, because PoE 1 will still be getting monetization because of the fact that all that stuff goes back as well as forwards. That means that we'll always be incentivized to support it. So effectively, I wanted to like build into what what the company is doing, a way to incentivize us to do the right thing here.
Brilliant
and so that's like part of
idea.
the reason why we did it that way. But there's one other point as well I want to make, which is that when you do run a live service game, you kind of realize that like the stuff, I mean, look, the stuff that's selling is the new stuff. And I don't think that like reselling a bunch of stuff from the past to everyone again is necessarily even going to make that much money anyway. It's like, sure, I mean, there's stash tabs and stuff, and that would have been like a short-term injection of cash probably if we'd done that. But really, in the long term, there's two things that are going to give us more money. One of them is like, getting new players. And those new players won't have paid us any money before, so they've got nothing to carry over. And the second thing is, keeping people interested in playing the game over and over again through all the different leagues, and thus, buying supporter packs through each of those times as well. And people having all their old stuff carry over really doesn't matter for those things, right? Like if our goal is long-term success of PoE 2 and 1, then it really, we can make this, and I don't think it should really hurt us at all in the long term. So I think just like for several reasons, it was the right move to do, and obviously players, are very happy about it as well. It makes the people who played the game before feel valued, and like, we're not just going to throw this stuff in the garbage whenever we decide to do something new, which I think is very important. There's that feeling of like we actually care about all that stuff that we sold you before. So I think that all of that stuff combined really does just make for, to me, a no-brainer decision. So this wasn't a difficult decision at all. It was something that was very obvious to us right from the point when we decided to make PoE 2, and so I guess that's the sort of our thinking behind it.
Yeah, no, I
Brilliant
think it's great.
thinking.
My stash tabs, thank you, by the way, but it's just it's an interesting direction to take, but I wholeheartedly agree with you that it seems like a no-brainer decision to just go ahead.
Because like realistically, right? What would have happened in terms of if things didn't carry over? People would buy supporter packs. Just maybe less people would have felt as incentivized to buy supporter packs, but people would buy supporter packs. We have the points from supporter packs. We would just buy the stash tabs, and we'd still call it a day. They haven't made really realistically any more money than they would have otherwise, because we'd have gotten the supporter packs anyways. The places where they would have made money is the people who were not going to have bought like the higher supporter packs, and then they do strictly for the stash tabs. And in those situations, I guess so. But then when you start adding microtransactions, you have people complain like, oh, they have to get it for the first game, they have to get it for the second game, so then they end up getting for only one game. And in those situations, you're not getting any more money than you would have had otherwise. So, you quickly start seeing you're not getting that much more money, but you're creating a whole lot more friction, unhealthy friction, I should say, for your player base. So, brilliant decision on their part.
And transfer things between the two, because I think in a lot of cases for like the existing PoE audience, you're going to have people that are going to play both.
For sure,
right? Like they're going to go back and forth between the two of them, and they're going to spend money on both of them. Sure. And again, I think this kind of goes back into this like conversation of like, when you treat players like that, when you make things so accessible, when you
just
don't make a situation where it looks like
naturally
you're just trying to
gain
take money from them at every given turn.
Respect.
I think it builds a relationship in which they don't feel like they need to spend money. They feel like they want to. Like they want to support you. And I think that's something that's really important. This ties into like a conversation. This is more of like a philosophical thing on my part, but over the last couple of years, I've noticed that there's been a trend lately where I think that a lot of companies are trying to either strike a balance or try to trend in the direction of like younger audiences and different people like to say the mythical modern audience or something like that. And one of the things that I've noticed is that like great games just seem to land well, right? Like Elden Ring is a game that's played by ages probably 13 to like, I don't know, probably folks in their 70s have played Elden Ring. Like it really does cover that massive group of people. And I think that in a lot of cases, the industry is kind of losing sight of how like older players are not aging out of video games like they would in other industries. Right. So like they feel like they have to target their games towards something else. And I noticed like the first thing that caught me off guard was when I logged into Path of Exile, and the first thing that happens is all of the other characters get hung. And, so it's like it's not a game that immediately wants to treat you like a child. Like it has its tone, it knows what its universe is and what its themes are. How do you think you strike that middle ground, or do you think it's necessary to strike a middle ground with an audience?
Well, at the end of the day, what we're doing is making a game that we enjoy, right? Like we're making a game that we think is cool. And I think the danger really comes when you try to make a game for an audience that you're not part of. Like I think that's where you start to make things that appeal to
You
nobody.
lose sight very quickly of what's made your game good.
Probably the people you're trying to make a game for that aren't you feel patronized by whatever it is you're doing. There's
a lot of examples of that.
Yeah, and you don't, and also you don't, once again, you just don't know what it is they want. Like the only person that I know, like the person I know the most what they want is myself, right? Yeah. Like I know exactly what I'm looking for in a game, and so and also like a lot of the people on the team as well, like like the people on the development team really need to like what it is they're making. So as I said, we're making a game for ourselves primarily, and I think if we do that we will find an audience of people who are like us, who enjoy this kind of thing. And we do enjoy like darker themes and like doing like fun stuff. Like just honestly, it's just really fun to do this stuff. The most fun that our artists have are
my reaction when I saw that Doriani device on the wall that just cleanly slices someone in two. That was like I still think back and I think, God damn, that's cool, and that's not something you would see in many games because of exactly what Legendary Drop said, where it's like people are trying to leave themselves open to a younger audience, to where the demographic that might have really enjoyed a certain art style is just they don't get that anymore because it's not conducive for the target audience. And then it puts the game or the product into this weird place where it's not really for anybody because it tries to appeal to everybody.
When they're like making things that are more extreme, like you probably, I guess you probably didn't. Oh no, we show you in that presentation the Black Chambers that has all the crazy body horror stuff, and it's like they had so much fun. Just like
more bots.
Black Chambers.
Or what did I miss?
Oh no, we show you in that presentation the Black Chambers that has all the crazy body horror stuff. And it's like they had...
Oh God.
So much fun. Just like, oh yeah, what do we get this guy? Just like pull his intestines around a crate, like
what?
So much fun. Presentation the Black Chambers that has all the crazy body horror stuff, and it's like they had so much fun. Just like, oh yeah, what do we get this guy? Just like pull his intestines around a crate, like around a gear train, like like stuff like that. They're just like and like slicing the guy in half vertically.
Exactly that one.
I saw like the cheese grater machine. I was like, thank God.
So it's like there's a smile on the artist's face when they're designing stuff like that. So it's like, and if they're enjoying it, then the players will enjoy it. So like I think that's really what it comes down to. Just target yourself, like make stuff that you think is cool, and then so long as there's enough other people like you out there, then you'll get a big audience.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see here. These are we're into the bonus round here. Here we go. Path of Exile. Oh, this is a really good one. So obviously long-standing.
Let me do something on Twitch real quick. Can I add a limit on how old your Twitch account has to be before you can follow? I should be able to do that, right? Like a follow age. Let me see if I can do that real quick. Because it looks like a lot of these accounts are freshly new, you know? Wait. My stream schedule says Diablo 4. That can't be right. Ew. No. We don't do that here. If anything, I should say Path of Exile. Like that should be the default. We don't do Diablo here. Stop it. Don't misinform the public. We don't do that here. Anyways, let's see. Can I do this? Where would I find this setting? Stream? Question mark. Followers only, no. Food categories, no. Sub only, no. I swear I can't find this thing, but I feel like it's somewhere. I'll just Google it. Follower verification. There we go. I don't really care about verification, but without the verified phone number must have accounts older than a day. A day. This should. Wait, is this just for chats? Oh yeah. Yeah, I don't want to like add a rule that would actually affect people who might have just created their Twitch account too recently, but a day seems fair. I assume it's just saved automatically, so and same with chat. Let's do that as well. Without it, this must have accounts older than a day. Yeah, same thing here. They don't need to have like verified anything, just they must have an account older than a day. And if many still get through, then I will make him a bit more strict. But let's hope that solves the bot situation. I'm really hoping it does. I'm tired of seeing them. Tired. Okay, let's continue this.
Standing game. There's a lot of narrative and story elements from Path of Exile 1, a lot of world building that's very pivotal to this game. It's picking up off of the events of Path of Exile, obviously. How do you guys approach storytelling and in a way to keep players invested, but also, with Path of Exile 2 coming out, how are you guys going to, onboard those new players that maybe won't go play Path of Exile 1?
So as a starting point, like you really can play through PoE 2 and understand the story without knowing anything about PoE 1. Like it is the same world. There are going to be some characters who repeat, that kind of thing. Like if you played PoE 1, there's a lot of stuff there for you. But we do have to make sure that the story kind of feels engaging to someone who just didn't experience it before. I think one of the things that's really interesting with storytelling in an action RPG is that you have to be really careful not to be overbearing. Like there are cases where like we expect people to play through the game lots of times, right? And so like if you have a lot of like so the quintessential thing that a lot of games do, most games do, is they'll detach the camera from the play, from the play position, and they'll like do things like you talk to an NPC and it comes down and you've got stuff like that, right? And I think for a game that you play through one time, that stuff is very effective and works well, and it does help with engagement in the story, and like that's a good thing.
Okay, I'll take this back a bit because I'm still kind of dealing with the whole setting thing.
A lot of games do, most games do, is they'll detach the camera from the play, from the play position, and they'll like do things like you talk to an NPC and it comes down and you've got stuff like that, right? And I think for a game that you play through one time, that stuff is very effective and works well, and it does help with engagement in the story, and like that's a good thing. But the moment that you do that, when you've got a campaign that you want people to be able to like run through quickly, just taking the camera away from where it is and putting it somewhere else immediately makes it feel like a chore to engage with all of those NPCs and everything. Like in PoE 1, if you want to, you can burn through like all of that story and quest stuff like very, very easily. And so we're kind of trying to make sure that in PoE 2, like we had this sort of difficult challenge of like, we want people to care about the story more than they did in PoE 1, but we also don't want to have that feeling of like, oh, you like made the campaign this annoying process to have to go through. I think that is something that some of the games have run into, and so that
Diablo 4. If you're playing through the campaign with D4 and you already know what happens, there are so many areas, and Arcane, who is a frequent chatter, can attest to this. There are so many areas where it's just very, very annoying too. Oh, you have to walk with this NPC as he goes down here. Like the first time, of course, it's not an issue, but if you had to do this a second time, miss me with that, and PoE obviously don't have such quests that would make you wait for like an NPC to walk to a certain place. The closest thing PoE 1 has is like like the Black Flag area in like Act 7, I think. Branking is Act 6, Act 6, I think. The area where you have to push those pillars into place. That's like the closest thing. And even then, you're killing monsters as you're doing it. It's part of the gameplay. It's not, oh, you're just walking with this guy around town because he feels like getting fresh air. Like, bruh.
Then they start to think, oh, we need ways to skip it. And like it drives all of that stuff, right? Like we want we want to try and do both. So I think that what we've really tried to do is to add more of that story stuff through the campaign in ways that are both not annoying but do sort of allow you to experience stuff without having to stop your gameplay. So you've got things like as you're walking through areas, like sometimes
oh no,
that you can click on that like will play as.
Tell me why I thought it was my connection for a second, and then when he said it, I was like, okay, it's not me. Oh, it's not me, thank God.
You as you run through and stuff like that. We've also made the like more, I guess, like animated story moments that you sort of get to experience without actually having to stop running around. Like you've got things like boss intros and things like that. Like you get a moment to like tell a bit of a story as the boss is coming out, with a few lines of dialogue that can really, like make like sell the idea without kind of getting in your way. So I guess that's the sort of main thing. And I think one of the games that inspires me the most, and strangely enough in this regard, is Half-Life, where they always made sure to never break the character's ability to like you've got one perspective through the entire game, right? Like there's never a moment where like where you have a cutscene or you fade out and fade in and do something else. Like, and I agree with that thing wholeheartedly. Like the moment you do that, you feel like you lose control and you feel like it's a game telling you something rather than you playing something. So I actually am a big believer in like keeping the character's perspective the entire time. So that being said, we do have a few things. There's an intro cinematic that you guys got to see.
It was very good.
I second that.
It was a lot of fun to create, by the way. And there's even a couple more things like that later on in the campaign as well.
Very cool.
Which
we'll
be doing. So yeah, I think that the story stuff
more
is
cinematics.
Is
that what I just heard?
As I said, have to maintain that idea of like,
question mark?
Don't get in the way, don't be annoying, don't like if you know what you're doing. Don't make you have to do annoying steps. Like actually, here's another random example about this kind of stuff where like there's this idea in where we have to consider both.
What's he looking at? he looked up
if you know what you're doing,
and I saw a bright
don't
blue
make you have to do
flash
annoying steps. Like actually, here's another random example
there.
about this kind of stuff. Where like
A screen or
there's this
something.
idea in where we have to consider both what the character knows, but also what the player knows. So in our storyline, unlike a lot of games, if you know as a player where something is before someone has told you about it, then we will allow you to go and do that quest before you know about the quest and that kind of stuff. And like we're generally pretty consistent with the idea that like that you don't have to just talk to an NPC just to find something out that the player already knew. Like that's really important. Like you don't just, like, you know like if you can always like you have to go to an NPC if you have to like turn in a quest item because they need to like make something for you or do something like that. But if you already know exactly how something works, there is no requirement for you to talk to an NPC just to find that out.
A bot still made it true. This one is an older one, created November 15. So 11 days ago, so you obviously went through that. Okay.
And once again, I think that's a bit unusual as far as games go because most story games kind of like the character has to know about something before you're allowed to do it. Whereas in a lot of cases, but here it's like it's very important to us that if you know what the campaign is and you've done the storyline a million times, you just go straight there, you just do the thing, and it's very there's nothing in your way.
Are there instances in which you could act?
I remember Jonathan much earlier said there would be instances where the NPC would actually acknowledge the fact that acknowledge that you shouldn't have known where it was or yada like how on earth just a nice little dialogue was like how are you here, well, how did you do this, when you shouldn't even have known about the quest.
Actually go and like take down like a boss that might be a part of a quest before the quest is actually taken.
Yeah, absolutely. So that happens all the time. So we do in some cases have blockages and things that but when we do that, it's because there's some key you have to get from something and stuff like that. So there are blockages along the way that are mandatory, but generally speaking, you can ignore the NPCs for everything except having to turn in quest items, and then you'll still be able to complete everything just fine.
That's cool.
And go through everything just fine.
Yeah. I like that because the idea is this kind of goes back to one of our earlier discussions, but it's the idea of earning the ability to trivialize the game.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So and that's something that players like. Who knew? Players like to earn things in games, including skill and reputation and items and whatnot. But I think that there's something really special in that where, for these more experienced players, once you've run through the campaign a couple of times, now all of a sudden, I don't need to talk to these people. I can go grab this. I can go kill this. I can do this. I can come back and then take the quest and turn everything in and then go back to doing what I was doing.
Sure.
That's very cool. I like that a lot. So just in general with PoE, you guys have PoE 2, you guys have done a lot of new things. You guys have added a lot of new things. How much freedom do you guys give your team to experiment with new ideas, and how do you guys decide what features are making it into these games?
So it is honestly a mix, but I guess one of the things I like to do as a manager generally is that if someone suggests something and I've got an idea as well, then if those things are of equal weight, like if I don't have a reason particularly to prioritize one or the other, I'll always go with what the team wants to do over what I would prefer to do. I think that's just important because it means that the team just feels a lot more ownership over what the game is, and they feel like that their ideas are actually getting in, and they feel like what they come up with kind of gets into the final product. So it's interesting being a game director because you've kind of got this mix of tyranny, but also democracy in terms of you've obviously have to make sure that the game is going in the direction.
No
I'm not going to do
mutiny.
anything in the game that is something that I wouldn't like. But at the same time, if I'm ambivalent towards something, but another team member is really passionate about it, then it's absolutely something that I think that they should be allowed to do because it'll make them much happier. And I think also the passion of the person making the product shows through a lot in the final result. So I always want to err on that side. But the main thing, of course, that I'm here to say is what? But if I am like, no, I don't like this, I really have to just be tyrannical and say, this can't go in the game because I don't. I really have to, on some level, have some kind of cohesion around the whole vision of the thing.
Yeah.
You really don't want it to turn into some kind of design by committee product either. So yeah, it is a bit of a tough balance, but ultimately, yeah, I would hope that the team feels like ideas they come up with have a good shot to go in. And generally speaking, I'm fairly fine with whatever ideas they come up with going. And so long as there's something that I don't think is making the game worse, I'm like, yeah, go right ahead.
Yeah.
You can. Let's go with that. Let's come up. Let's do this crazy boss. Let's do whatever crazy monster you came up with.
Yeah, I like that, especially with the boss design and stuff like that. I think that like when I was playing the build of PoE 2 that I was playing, like the boss design is something. It's wild how much you guys have evolved it since your last game, or just in general, just for the genre. It's just so cool. Sure. Which actually it brings me to one final question that I have, which, and this is something that was kind of brought up when we were at the event. I just want to say that I appreciate the genius of this. But the idea that you guys are going to be releasing the first 3 acts and then you are going straight into the end game because you guys want to make sure that in early access, the end game is what is getting played. The end game is what's being tested. What's the motivation behind that? Like, I feel like obviously part of it is somewhat a no-brainer because PoE is its end game in a lot of cases. These games are their end game in a lot of cases. But what are you guys looking to accomplish for it? And what was the what was the mindset making such a intelligent decision?
So it's funny because you say it's a no-brainer, but it surprisingly took us a while to realize that that's what we needed to do. And strangely enough, it actually happened. Like we changed direction completely to this when we were when we did the announcement for Settlers of Calgar. And so what happened was, so like we obviously had a bunch of in-game plans. We had a design for what the in-game would be, but we did the Settlers of Calgar announcement, and that announcement was really huge. And
it's so good.
On the same day, on the same.
Here's something I find interesting. If this switch happened on the Settlers of Calgar, I can really see why the delay to November was as necessary as it was, because I'm sure PoE 2 right now is a much different game than what it was in June, because that was even before Settlers of Calgar was live, because Settlers was July, like late July.
Day as that announcement occurred,
it's so good.
On the
by
same
the way.
day, on the same day as that announcement occurred, there was also a Diablo 4 announcement where they announced, I think it was a class they were announcing, and everyone was saying like, oh, Blizzard's making this expansion and it costs like $60 or whatever it costs, and the amount of and the content they're making is like not even as large as this random PoE 1 expansion that's coming out. You know what I mean? Like there was all this sort of stuff like that.
Yeah.
When I saw that, I'm like, okay, well, so first of all, like making a class is actually like a way larger amount of work.
Oh, it's a lot of work.
Than making Settlers of Calgar was. Like honestly, when you actually compare the two in terms of the amount of work that goes into it, one of them is a lot easier. But then I was talking to Mark about this, and Mark was like, well, yeah, but so maybe they should be making more of the type of content like what we're making. And I was like, well, you're not wrong about that. Like, okay, just because something takes more work doesn't necessarily mean that like that's the right thing to be doing.
Yeah.
And then I thought, well, hang on, are we making the same mistake with PoE 2? Like we were barreling forward thinking like we have to finish this campaign before we can work on all this endgame stuff. And then I was like, well, hang on, like why are we making all this content that's really hard to make when we could be making content that's honestly easier to make, and probably the players will get a lot more satisfaction out of it. Like there'll be a lot more actual gameplay that comes. It's like because like when you're making a game like ours, it's like you've got this phase where you make you have to make a bunch of art, you have to make a bunch of animation and like all this sort of stuff, and then there's the phase where like you get to like do a bunch of remixes and reuse and like all that stuff, and like an in-game typically is where all that sort of stuff happens. And like that stuff is honestly easier to do than making it in the first place. And yet the amount of actual value that a player gets out of that is like in a lot of ways higher.
Much higher.
So we effectively were just like, you know what? Like why are we not just stopping? Like we need to just drop everything. We were like towards the end of making to finishing Act 4. And we were like, you know what? Let's just drop everything that we're doing. We'd already done a pass through the game, by the way. So like a lot of that stuff's already.
For the people who argue that having competition is not healthy or whatever, this is prime example of competition done right. and for Rod's Malignant Honor, who decided Diablo likes were supposed to be a thing, he could learn a thing or two. Just saying. Just saying. Your competition does well, the whole community does well. You can learn a thing or two from it. Like,
done. We're like, you know what? Let's just drop everything that we're doing. We'd already done a pass through the game, by the way, so like a lot of that stuff's already done. But like we were like doing the polish work on Act 4. We're like, let's just drop everything and just focus entirely on in-game now. Like, let's take what we've been doing with in-game and like, now we're gonna put the whole company on it. We're gonna stop completely working on all of the campaign stuff that we're doing, and we're just gonna focus entirely on in-game and make that as big as we possibly can. Because yeah, the players will get a lot more out of that. And like honestly, like a 3-act campaign for a new player, it's already a huge game. Like sure, we're making a game that's that's 50 hours long, but having a 25-hour long game is also still a big campaign, right? Like, and yet, yeah. And the other thing as well about this is that if we have a bad end game when we get to early access, then we kind of have to say to people, hey, trust us, guys. There's a good end game coming. You guys don't really. I mean, we'll tell you kind of what it is, but like, you guys have to just sort of trust us what it is, right? But if we have a great end game and then the campaign's 3 acts short, well, it's like you know exactly what another 3 acts is going to be like because you just played the first 3, right? So it's like you know exactly what to expect when we add that later. But we get to impress you with an end game before that point. So yeah, that
brilliant
really
idea. Like
it was not really that long ago when we came to do that. And I think that was a really important decision because we effectively, and the other fun thing about it, by the way, is that now like making the end game for PoE 2 is like going back to the making PoE 1 leagues again, except with the resources of the whole company all in one thing. So it's like making 7 leagues concurrently, which is kind of a crazy thing, but it's been very fun. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun to work on that stuff, and it's pretty cool. So yeah, it's funny because in retrospect, it's like obviously this is the right move, right? Like obviously this is better.
Yeah.
But it did take a little while, and it took that moment of like, well, what the hell are we doing here, to actually realize that we had to change direction like that.
Appreciate the blatant transparency here, but give me a second. Okay, what was I saying? Yes, so firstly, appreciate the blatant transparency coming from GGG here. First things first. And what I want to say in terms of what he just said is how factual it is that something that in hindsight is the no-brainer decision, like working on Endgame, is in many cases, and this is not even just a game design perspective type deal, but in many cases it's not as black and white when you're looking at it from the natural progression. Because when you take on many tasks, it's like, what's the natural progression? The natural progression is I go from beginning to end. But how do you start to tell yourself maybe going from beginning to end is actually just the wrong call? Maybe I should stop somewhere, like start the beginning but stop somewhere and then just speed run the end. Just start the end and then come back. Like, it would take a lot of, I want to say, introspection to be able to figure that out, especially when they did. And I guess what facilitated it is not even the most obvious. D4 released with no like you would think is maybe okay Diablo released without endgame. People say it does have endgame. Last Epoch, same thing, so let's just make endgame. Like that isn't even like the introspection point where it's like, oh, this is how we figured out. Like, no, it was, well, we did probably less work than them, but they did more. But the players see this, and this is how it resonated with the players. So why not just do this? That is, exactly what he said, pretty much. And it makes perfect sense to say, to just, to go through the process. But I can also imagine that when this decision was being made, there were more than a few voices saying there's no way this works, or there's no way people, like there are those voices of doubt, obviously, as they be having in situations like this. But props to GG for the transparency. Like I really love this interview.
Yeah, because I mean, like from my perspective, when I'm looking at it, it's like, well, story content. It's not like it's not worthwhile, or the work that your folks have been doing on it isn't worthwhile. There's a lot of value in it.
Or I should say Jonathan in particular, because he is transparent AF.
Extracted within the first couple months of the game releasing, and then done. Whereas like Endgame is the reason why people keep coming back to the game over and over and over
again. But also
a
lot of the value that we get from making that stuff is that we then get to use it to remix it to make it an in-game. And so like the in-game maps that we were showing, like all of them look like unique areas, but all of them are just like done by just like we've got so many assets through the campaign of the game that we can take and then turn into maps. Like when people are making new maps, it really only takes a few days to turn around a new one, because like in-game maps I'm talking about, because in terms of the environment, I mean, because they just take a bunch of existing stuff and they're putting it back together. And it's like, you'd be surprised how different you can make areas feel than campaign areas by changing remixing a few different tile sets together, doing some like changing the color of things, changing the lighting settings and all that sort of stuff. And suddenly you've got an area that just doesn't feel like anything else you've done. And then you make a few specific bespoke tiles to kind of make to add like a specific theme to the area, and then you've got a new map. And it's like we can do that stuff so quickly, and it really makes the in-game feel gigantic. There's just all sorts of shit in there that there's so many maps and like interesting things to find, and the last benefit is that for a lot of developers, when you're making content quickly, you just feel so much more productive, and it's so much more fun to actually get stuff working. Like it's the slow grind that kind of wears on you over the years, but the whole just like, oh man, we're just like making maps left and right, we're like turning out all these systems, like it just feels great to do. So
yeah, I would imagine, especially because like, I mean, you got to think, I mean, you already do think, but with you guys been working on Exile 1 for so long, it's like going back to the regular grind when you're just going to make the end game content, right? It's like, oh, we were already doing this. So that's cool. That's cool, man. I'm looking forward to it. I know a lot of people are looking forward to it.
A lot.
It's going to be a very special
it's
game.
still 9 days away. It's like, how do we fill up that time?
Even as an early build that I've gotten my hands on, it feels transformative in ways that I haven't been able to express properly in words yet, but believe me, I will.
I'm really glad to hear that. That's great to hear.
Is there anything that you would like to say about Path of Exile 2, or anything you'd like to say to the audience for the end of this? Give it a second.
So obviously it's a scary going into a launch, right? Because you don't know how people are going to react.
But connection was.
I think that I'm really happy with the work the team have done on the game. Like it's just so. I think it's a good game, and I'm just really looking forward to seeing how people react to it. Like I just want to see were we crazy this whole time what we were making, or did we actually do we have the right idea? Like all the changes we've made, all the things we've done. Like I just want to see does it actually, are players actually going to love it? And I'm hoping they do.
Yeah, I think they will. I think they will. Well, man, thank you for joining me today. I can't wait for the release of the game. I'm sure everybody else can't either. I'll be covering it, that's for sure. There'll be more content that's coming on it. But thank you for joining me today, man.
This, I would say, has been I love this interview, and this honestly is one of my, I want to say, new favorite interviews with Jonathan. And I guess one reason I think I like it as much as I do is it really goes into it paints a picture, right, of how the development of PoE 2 has been so far. It really, he does a really good job in expressing information, in telling you, oh, this is what happened, and in all those bits and pieces that you get to see into the things that have happened over the course of PoE 2's development, you get a sense of, oh shit, this has gone through so many iterations, this has gone through so much care, these people really care about this game in a way you just can't buy. It's like Jonathan's passion for PoE 2, you can't just buy it, right? this is a game he's seen since, I want to say, inception, basically, with PoE 1, right? It's something he wants to see at its best. Screw, like, honestly, I'm not gonna say screw monetization, but if it's between monetization and making the game good, he's gonna pick the game every single time. And that is a beautiful place for a game to be. And you can, and this is something you can see in PoE 1, but once PoE 2 comes out, I'm sure we would have many situations where it's like, oh, this is that one thing he was talking about that one time during that one interview where he talked about maybe one change making multiple a plethora of changes, or even just the insights that this interview in particular provides into their thought process. I really like this one. W interview, like this is really good. Unreserve your hype. Quinn reacts to Crip's thoughts on PoE 2. Crip relates. Okay, well, Crip has one? Interesting. This is an interesting thumbnail as well. I almost wanted to see it, but probably check it out after stream. Criparian. Should we watch Quinn's reaction to it? So we get like, so you all get like 3 reactions. The only problem I have is, by the way, more of mischief, I assume. Anyways, I'm getting distracted. I don't know how much longer I'm going to be streaming, so I probably don't finish this video, and I don't want to start a video that I just don't finish, right? So how
my take.
Oh, is this why it starts off in 30 minutes where a lot of times I have to go back? Huh. So what do I want to do? Do we just send it and get as far as we can, or do we stop whenever we're actually going to stop stream? Let's see the first minute and then we decide.
All right, Crip's take on PoE 2. By the way, too. What's it gonna be? Let's think here. I'm Crip. I mean, there's no way he's gonna say the game's bad, right? What's his take gonna be? Like, PoE 2's good and it looks good, and he's excited to play it. I mean, that's all we can say. What else can he do? Let's see what he says.
Hey guys, how's it going? Criparian here. Today I have a Path of Exile 2 video for you guys. Now,
I almost already know I'm not going to stop at the 1 minute mark, but we're gonna go with the copium that I will.
this one has been pretty anticipated by some of you. I have heard you. I have listened to the many comments asking for my opinion, my take, how excited I am about PoE 2 finally being playable, and it will be playable on December 6th in early access. And I will be playing December 6th, or as early as the servers are stable. It looks like there will be quite a lot of people trying to play on that day, and understandably, it does seem to be like a pretty good game from some pretty amazing developers. So what's going on? Well, they had their big announcement. They had like a stream. I watched it as it was live. I did a little bit of a react. I wasn't quite as animated. You know, the people that are basically main gaming Path of Exile 1, you know, they've been in kind of like a content drought lately. So, you know, for them, it is the craziest thing. Every little bit about the game.
Wait.
Shades.
Wait. Crap. Content drought? Does he heard about Magicraft, bro? Does he not know about the Bazaar? Does he not know? Wait, so
he's Bazaar main,
only, bro. Wait, and Hearthstone. Wait, what does that even mean, bro? Wait, I'm confused. The content drought. Wait, I don't think it's got anything to do with the content drought. I think it's everything to do with the fact that we're excited about Path of Exile 2. Okay, all right. I
agree with Quinn as well.
I like reacting. I enjoy watching videos. It's one of my favorite things. Do you know what I was doing before I started the stream this morning? I was watching a video about H-Bomber guy and what happened to the people after he made his video on plagiarism. Okay, it was a good video. Well, it's actually a mid video. Basically, he just rehashed the original video, showed a little bit of the aftermath. But whatever, I just watched a video. Like, I like watching videos. I'm a video enjoyer. Very enjoyable. Okay, there's nothing wrong with doing that.
I have also been looking at a lot of the podcasts that they've done. They've done a lot of Q&A. Jonathan and some of the other devs have been really busy trying to talk about the game and tell people about it. So hopefully I can give you guys a little bit of insight. A lot of what I have heard from the devs is that a lot of the questions that they answer in these Q&As, these podcasts that they participate in, pretty much everything that you imagine that you might want out of Path of Exile 2 will be there, but it seems like a lot of stuff will be added as the early access stage of the game is underway and afterwards. So we don't actually know what kind of game in its completion we will get on December 6th. The last time I played Path of Exile 2 was at ExileCon, which was about a year and a half ago.
Oh,
very nice.
really?
I was there, bro.
Again, flew out to New Zealand with Anya. We had an amazing...
You didn't go for any of the last, well, how many have there been dev, not dev events, basically? I know there was one just like a week before the live stream or something like that. There was one, then there was one like, was it a few months before that, and then one a few months before that. So I don't know why.
Time. It was really awesome. They got me to open up for them on their show. So it was really cool. But I have heard that the game has changed quite a bit.
Bro,
since...
I was there, and I literally was chilling with Crip and Rania, bro. I was talking to, dude, I was there. What was I doing? Yeah, I was telling Crip he needs to breed. That's what it was. I was trying to get him to breed with Rania. Yeah, that's what it was. Yeah. I remember that. I was there.
Lol.
Then
Question?
several times
What?
over, in fact. So I don't actually know what to expect. I don't really go like super crazy hype mode on something unless I've actually played it, unless I actually know what it's going to be like.
No, okay, it's making it sound bad. No, okay, no, well, you're making it sound bad. No, what I'm saying is that I was saying like, you know, kids are cool, bro. You know, like I was trying to sell them on kids. That's what I was trying to. Okay.
Super crazy.
I mean, that could also be taken out of context into being something very entirely different and wild.
Literally days before I told you guys some of the news about it in Family and Friends and closed access for Bazaar in that case. In PoE, I haven't. I know they've had some kind of alpha super NDA stuff. I mean, I'm not under an NDA, so I'll just tell you I wasn't part of that. I don't know what it was like. I don't know what the game is.
I really hope it's super, ultra, mega, giga, turbo, ultra tight. And I pray to Jesus, okay, even though it doesn't exist, I pray to Jesus that it's like friends and family only. Because it would suck so much dick if it turns out it's like the D4 thing where... Or it turns out like fucking 40% of all content creators have been like just playing PoE2 relentlessly for like the last fucking how many months, and then
that'd be fucked.
That would just be so awful.
That would be
so awful.
Exactly.
That would genuinely be fucked. I don't think GGG would make that mistake, because that is a genuine, like, an actual mind-blowing, like, it's such a noob mistake that I'm not surprised that Blizzard fell for it, but it would blow my mind if they didn't see far enough to where the player base would feel robbed of that. And they've also just gone on to talk about how they really enjoy that phase, the discovery phase. So I really think it'd be a stretch to think anybody has had that much access to PoE 2.
To be fair to them, they actually have invited me on several occasions to some of their events to check out and playtest some of the content, and it's just been like really unlucky timing every single time this has happened. Like the last time they invited me for an event, it was our 10th wedding anniversary. So yeah, we had already made plans, and
and wedding anniversary in Anaheim or whatever, bro. Just do it. What the hell? Oh my god.
We were not going to cancel them for PoE2 playtest.
Crip is like, how do I describe it? Crip is not casual. Crip is he does streams from like his caravan and shit. Like it's really cool. No, not the word I'm looking for. No, Crip is not casual. No, Crip is it's kind of badass. It's badass how much fucks he doesn't give when it comes to streaming, and like he'll just play the Bazaar every day, bro, or Hearthstone or some shit every day, you know, and. Like he'll just do it from, you know, he just sets that shit up on the laptop and plays it from his caravan or whatever. You know, he just sets it up from his fucking laptop and plays it from his fucking caravan. That's cool. I like that. not the word stoic. It's like nonchalant. Nah, it's it's similar energy to Forsen actually. Like similar energy to Forsen, but different because his content's far more like structured and scheduled. But in the same time, he kind of doesn't give a fuck, right? Which is cool. That's badass. I like that. That's a really cool attribute. Yeah.
I very much wanted to go and do just that. So that's kind of where we're at. I don't...
And so I guess what I'm saying is because he doesn't give a fuck, you'd think that he would just not give a fuck and just, go to the fucking event and just, stream fucking Bizarre from his laptop or whatever and do the winning anniversary there. But yeah, I mean, yeah.
Have hands-on on the game. I don't know exactly how amazing it will be on day 0 of early access. I think it's pretty fair that most people should have the same expectation, but I also want to back that up with the people that are making Path of Exile 2 are largely the people that have made Path of Exile 1. Jonathan and Mark are 2 people that are pretty front and center talking about the game and presenting it as they did in their announcement. And these are 2 devs that are pretty much there from the beginning in Path of Exile 1. Path of Exile 1, probably from a developer standpoint, is maybe the most impressive game that I have ever seen in my life. So, I don't know if they'll get everything right on day 0 of early access, but
I always forget I'm clicking off of the things. When I try to pause, it just doesn't pause. I'm like, I'm like, why aren't you pausing?
That Path of Exile 2, however long it takes, will be probably the best game you will play for a good while to come.
100% agree, because like you can imagine what went into PoE 1, how much knowledge they had and how much they've improved since then, and then taking everything they've learned over the 15-ish years PoE 1 has been there, and I'm pack loading PoE 2 with all that and more is like, oh god, you're gonna have our souls for a bit, aren't they?
I think it'll be like the best game we play in the next. My prediction is like 5 years. That grip is like
10 plus.
I would say 5. Nah. I think we're going through a technology revolution. The thing is, if PoE can scale,
I'm not gonna try to predict how long. I don't know.
I think it will. If they embrace the tools and they allow themselves to pop off with it, I do think that I think there is a game coming in our lifetime, Chad. That's going to change all games, and it's going to be the ultimate game, which is basically going to be a second reality. It's going to be like a second reality, like it's some sort of game.
VR games are going to be lit
in the game. I think that's gonna. Yeah, whatever. You can think that. You can think like.
Watching this react of a react, I feel like I'm not even talking about PoE 2 at this point. Oh, holy. We're probably ending stream here. I think it's a good point to I don't know if I'm going to finish the video tomorrow. I might, but since Crip has no gameplay footage, it's genuinely just his thoughts. Maybe hold up, Sargog video. This might be what we end up starting stream tomorrow with. So yeah, it's not exactly the kind of video I was hoping for. This is probably more that. If it can
speculated on the meaning. Oh, howdy all, grab yourself a drink. It is time.
Correction to yesterday's video overflowed the Huh? Teaser from LA Game Show, major FAQ and big expedition news. Oh, big boom. Oh, the big boom confirmed. Okay, that was what I saw earlier today with the stream from the LA event showing the big boom. Class tier lists. Is he actually gonna make a tier list?
Oh, howdy all, grab yourself a drink. It is time for some Path of Exile 2 discussion. Today, this is going to be a really short video, but I wanted to summarize everything we know about the class tier list for Path of Exile 2 for early access's beginning. And that is, we know nothing. we have no idea about which of these classes are going to be the strongest, which ascendancies and builds are going to dominate.
So it is what I expected it to be.
In the late days of early access. So in S tier, we have the class that just looks the most exciting to you. The class Power Fantasy calls to you in a way that none of the others do. In A tier, we have the one that you just pick second. Maybe you think that the most exciting of the ascendancies is the Infernalist.
My S tier is Infernalist, A tier is Gemlin Legionnaire, D tier is literally everybody else except. No, yeah, somehow tier like our C tier. Like C tier will probably be the Warrior, the one that specializes in like that has the totem, the spirit nose. That one could be like C tier. That could be C tier. Then what else is there? Yeah, that's about it. That's pretty much it, huh? I don't know that there's any other ascendancy that really calls to me. Nah, there's nothing actually. Never mind.
But you think that the Deadeye is pretty close behind. Well, in that case, A tier is where the Deadeye goes for you. And then we're not going to bother with B tier or C tier. We lack information in order to be able to finally grade things in that way. We're just going to have a D tier, which is every single class that just doesn't have a Power Fantasy that calls to you. I know a bunch of people have been really excited to play a Chronomancer. They're not wrong to be excited by it, but for me personally, it hasn't done much for me, the class Power Fantasy, yet. Maybe when I learn more about it, that might change, but for that reason, for me personally, the Chronomancer, down in D tier. That doesn't mean you're wrong if you want to play it, doesn't mean that it might not end up being one of the strongest characters around. How long is it going to take for us to have some hard information on which ascendancies are best?
We kind of had the gist of this. I'm very curious about this, if there's any teaser I missed. Screenshots of a lot of late game rares. I don't care too much for that. Defiance banner reveal, huh? While active, killing enemies with attacks, so standing near a unique enemy. So that's why it looked like it was generating banner valor every second. Generates valor. Using the skill consumes valor to place a banner, yada yada yada. What does this valor do? Attacks, kill, obviously. 1 per second while standing near a unique enemy. More aura effect per valor. Radius is 3 meters. Duration is 6. Or until you leave the aura. Aura grants more armor and evasion. So exactly how banner defense banner was. This is banner defense, Jesus Christ. And then movement speed. So pretty much how it was in PoE 1 up until recently. I think they changed defense banner, right? Now it's no longer, now it's block or something. See, it's how it was, not how it is. Okay, what else is there? I know about this. What is this? Increased life recovery from rawhide belts, from flasks, charms. Recover life when used. Oh, you can have mods like that?
From an ailment. For example, of this, it's used whenever you become poisoned, and
that's kind of cool. This could be mirror tier, to be honest, because in my head, this is T1. This is T1. This is a hybrid. Actually, no, this honestly might not even be mirror tier. Here's why I think it might not be. If this follows the same ideology as PoE 1, then this guy is its own standalone mod. This guy could be a hybrid between damage and this guy. So max mana and hybrid ally damage. And then there's a standalone mod for damage, which is its own third prefix. And then in the suffix area, we have cast speed, we have life. Life rolling here is kind of whatever, but we have life, and then we have levels. You know, it could be a 5 affix item where it's like 1 hybrid, so that's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Could be that. Could also be hybrid with something else. I don't know. Either way, it might not be Mirror Tiara, but it is a very good scepter. Combat Frenzy. I don't really care. While active, you gain frenzy when you freeze, choose or pin an enemy. Okay, so basically the new frenzy. Herald of Plague. Killing spreads poison to other enemies, so other nearby enemies, and has a chance to also hinder them. Okay. Elemental Invocation. Oh. What about Radiant Spirits? Let's see what exactly he has to say. We'll probably just get it TLDR, then end stream.
The next one. Raging Spirits is next, and this is another one that's really interesting because this is a buff, whereas in Path of Exile 1, it's a minion spell. But it is a buff that has the minion tag, persistent tag, fire tag, and the duration tag. It reserves 30 spirit. While it's active, your fire spells will also summon Raging Spirits. So imagine that you cast a fireball and a summon Raging Spirit comes along for the ride. That's the intent here. These are short-lived flaming skulls that rush at nearby enemies and rapidly attack them.
What is their base duration? Does it say? It doesn't, right?
Can phase through them. Now, minions from this skill convert 70% of their fizz into
fire. No, it doesn't.
There is a limit of 10 SRSs that can be up, and fire area spells summon a spirit per 1.5 meters of radius. Projectiles from fire spells summon a spirit on hit, and there is a maximum of 6 spirits that can be summoned per spell cast. So this is going to be something where there's going to be a lot of playing around to work out what the best spammable fire spell is, whether it be something as simple as a
so basically it's kind of just what I already know.
But I believe based upon just
this is
how
your cultist.
where the hits are.
This is just your cultist ascendancy in gem form. Multi-proj 20% less for regular multi-proj? Not even GMP? But it's a level 1, never mind. This is a level 1, that's probably why. It probably goes all the way down. Grim Feast is an insane one. I remember seeing this, I think it was yesterday we saw this, right? Insane gem. It's probably going to be meta in a lot of builds. It's a very strong support gem. Shock Siphon. Cover from the ears when a supported skill deals killing blow to a shocked enemy. Okay. Right. What about Mana Flare? Its enemies causing to trigger mana flare on crits, consumes your mana to deal fire damage. Okay, cool. Coursing Current. Chance to shock nearby enemies when you shock an enemy. So, proliferation basically for shock. Moxie teased +1 to level of all chaos skills. Okay, we're not gonna look too deeply at this because I still want some things to be left to the imagination, if you will, when it comes to PoE 2 launch. Anyways, thank you for stopping by. I appreciate y'all. I'll be back tomorrow with potentially more PoE 2 content. I have no idea if there's any gameplay footage we have missed so far. If there isn't, then we'll figure out what we're gonna do. Anyways, till then,